Hi everyone, my name is Hillary. I am the programs coordinator here at the Phoenix Zoo. Hopefully, coming in and out of the camera, you're seeing Play-Doh right now. Play-Doh is a four-toed hedgehog, and Play-Doh is one of our animal ambassadors here at the zoo. Just having fun right now playing with his ball. Okay, sorry about that. Play-Doh is 4 years old and has been at the zoo for about 2 years now. Play-Doh loves to play with the balls, as you can see here. We use this pool as a form of behavioral enrichment for Play-Doh, just to give him something to do that's different than just being in his house. He is used to especially being an internet star. We have YouTube videos up of him. You cannot see him on exhibit at the zoo. He lives behind the scenes in our animal resources department because he is just used for programs like this, virtual programs, or he'll go to different schools and teach children about conservation and animals. And he also does some zoo programs like story time or any family programs that we might do. So a little bit about hedgehogs. Play-Doh is from Africa. Four-toed hedgehogs come from Africa. Now, these are the hedgehogs that are now legal to own here in Arizona. However, hedgehogs are not very friendly or cuddly. They look super cute, as you can see here, but they actually prefer to be left alone. They like to have a lot of space to move. Hedgehogs are actually incredibly fast. I was hoping Play-Doh would come over here by our camera, but he just wants to be by me right now, apparently. They're incredibly fast animals, so you want to make sure that they have a lot of space to move around in. They're also nocturnal, so I did gently wake Play-Doh up for this session, but right afterwards, he will go back to sleep. Now, guys, as people are coming in here, it's 9:01 right now. We're going to give a chance for just a few more people to join in. If you have questions about Play-Doh or about hedgehogs or about our conference at all, please just go ahead and throw those in the chat for us, and we can start monitoring those. I see one person, Alex just wrote, how fast can hedgehogs go? They can reach speeds up to 10 miles an hour, which is pretty quick if you look at these little itty bitty legs on him. That's pretty fast for such a small animal. They don't live very long. They'll live 4 to 5 years. So if you missed it earlier, Play-Doh here is 4 years old, but like most animals in captivity, they will live a little bit longer. They've been known to live about 10 years if they are in captivity or owned by someone. And of course, that's because they're getting all of the nutrition that they need and all of the vet care that they might need. Oh, there was a cute little close-up. Thanks, Rachel. Rachel's being our camera person for us right now, too. I'm going to check the chat, see if there are any more questions. I love the smiley faces and the hellos. So yeah, guys, anything you want to say on the chat, you are more than welcome to just say hi to people. Anytime you have questions, we'll be monitoring it, so feel free to ask those. If you just have comments, you want to say, Play-Doh is so cute. You're absolutely right. I agree. You can just put those in there too. Is there a question? Oh, what do hedgehogs eat? Great question. Hedgehogs are considered mostly insectivores, so they eat insects. Play-Doh's favorite snack are mealworms, those little brown worms, and sometimes we'll put them between the balls for Play-Doh to find, just as a fun form of behavioral enrichment. In the wild, hedgehogs have a very high tolerance for venom, so they can actually eat scorpions and some small venomous snakes. Great question. We just have a few more minutes. I'm going to actually put Play-Doh away because we do have one more friend to see. If you're not as fond of the mammals, but you really like amphibians, I'm going to go with the amphibians really quick here. So let's put Play-Doh back. Actually,
how many species are there? Other species?
Ooh, how many species of hedgehog are there?
Or are there others?
There are others. They're closely related to moles and shrews. I actually don't know how many other species of hedgehog there are. That is a great question. I know that there are others, but I'm not sure how many. Rachel's going to stay on Play-Doh, and I'm going to switch animals, and then we will switch cameras. Okay. All right, guys, one more friend while we're waiting just a couple more minutes for people to join in. This, hopefully my hands are out of the way, there we go, is a Western tiger salamander. As I said before, salamanders are amphibians. One of my favorite is the salamander. So like frogs, they have very permeable skin. So we always want to make sure that our hands are very clean and moist when we're touching the salamander or any of our frogs. Like Plato the hedgehog, the salamander is part of our AAR program. This salamander's name is Nubbin. Nubbin is almost 10 years old, but these salamanders can actually live about 15 years. They are from North America, hence the name tiger salamander. If you can kind of see, almost stripe-like. Oh, but Nubbin's moving now. Really fun to hang out with the salamander. Just like frogs, they are hatched from eggs and they become larvae where they'll have gills. As they're growing, they will absorb those gills into the front of them. Right there, you can kind of see as he's breathing there. Or she, excuse me, Nubbin is a female. He looks dirty. He is dirty. He loves to be, he has a moss substrate because he likes to stay moist, being an amphibian. So we have the moss substrate in his transport container, which helps to keep him nice and moist. I love him too, Lily. He's my favorite. He's poisonous, right? Yeah. So they can secrete towards their rear end here a milky substance that does put off a poison. That is a defense mechanism for the tiger salamander. Yeah, good one. Any other questions about our tiger salamander? Are they aggressive? So obviously Nubbin here is not aggressive. Nubbin is very used to being handled. However, in the wild, males can be especially aggressive at breeding season. No, Elijah asked if he's going to get much bigger. No, she is full-sized at this point. You can see she's about the length of my hand, or my two hands as you go from her whole tail. They can be about 7 to 14 inches long. How long do they live? Yeah, they live about 14 years. They can live a pretty long time, and that's the same for captivity and in the wild. We have a question, how old is she? Nubbin is almost 10 years old, and we have had her at the zoo for about 8 years. Any other questions that I might have missed? How much time do they spend in the water? When they are first hatched, they are only in the water. They are purely aquatic. And then they'll spend most of their time on land as they get older. That's where they're going to find their food, which is insects mostly, and fish. The babies eat fish. They'll eat fish if they can get them as adults, but they're mostly spending time on land eating insects. The tiger salamander is North America's only salamander. Any other questions? All right. Like I said, if you have just joined us, thank you so much for hanging out with us at our Teen Career Conference. We are kind of going back and forth, just letting everybody get on. She totally is cute. Letting everybody get on, but we're going to get started here in just a minute. Gabby is going to take over, and she's the one that's been emailing you if you have been joining, if you pre-registered. Otherwise, thank you for joining us on YouTube as well. Let's put her little face up there because she's cute.
Okay, thank you so much, Hillary and Rachel, for helping us have our animal experience to kick things off. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited that you are here. My name is Gabby, as Hillary mentioned, and Hillary and I are co-hosting our event today. This is our first time doing a virtual Teen Career Conference, and we are on YouTube Live as well. So if you're watching us on YouTube, hello and welcome to the event. We have got a little under 50 folks here joining us, so pretty exciting. So we have got a huge array of things for you today. So I'm going to pop up the agenda on the screen so you can see what we've got going on. And of course, you're going to see my YouTube channel right for a second until I get my screen up and running. All right, so here is our agenda for the day. Well, obviously, we started out with our ambassador animal. We have a really quick survey that we'd like you to take to get things kicked off. If you were pre-registered, you would have seen most of the questions already. And then we'll going with our first speaker panel. Then we'll take a break. We have a second speaker panel. And then we have a special visit with another zoo animal that's actually lives on one of our exhibits. And then we're going to go away from Zoom for a little bit to Gather Town and do our virtual exhibit hall. So that is really going to be very interesting, I think, because you get to move around in the space and meet different people. And there's also a scavenger hunt. So keep an eye out for posters all around the space that tell you about the scavenger hunt. And then we have a job search skills clinic in the afternoon, and then we'll end with a tour of our conservation center at the zoo, and then we'll be done. So this is being recorded, so if you miss anything, if you feel like you need to take a break, this is going to be a long day. It's a long time to be on the computer. So if you feel like you need to take a break and step away, you will get a copy of this recording. If you pre-registered. If you didn't, then make sure to leave your email address in the post survey, or I'll put my email address in the chat for you. And that way you can get a hold of me to get a copy of the recording. That way you can feel free to pop in and out as much as you'd like. The virtual exhibit hall will not be recorded. We just don't have an ability to do that. So you'll need to, if you really want to experience that, you'll need to definitely be here at 12:05 when that starts. Other than that, it's up to you to just have to be free and enjoy yourself. So I'm going to ask for you to, there we go to our first poll for today. This is a little bit of a survey. It's about 7 questions. So you can either use the QR code, or I'm also going to put the link to it in the chat. One sec. All right, there's the link for it there. So I'm going to give you just a moment to log into that. And so you can either do it on your phone or your computer with the link or the QR code. And then once we have a few minutes to get people into it, then I will start showing you the poll results. Oh, I'm just hearing that my screen is not showing the right thing, so I apologize. So let me reshare that. Okay, hopefully that fixed that. Okay, thanks so much, Kinley, for letting me know. So now you can see the QR code on the screen there. Did I mention this is our first virtual conference? Hope you'll be patient with us as we figure out the technology. I'm just going to wait another couple moments and then I'll start putting the results up on the screen for you. Yes, Rebecca, when I'm on this link, it says, how are you feeling today? That's exactly where you're supposed to be looking at. So let me pull up the results so we can start seeing. I wonder if I need to start it. Okay. So now, there we go. It's working. We've got lots of happy, curious, excited. We have some sleepy folks. That's totally understandable. I've been drinking some coffee to get going. Some people are in cuteness overload from our animals. Lots of sleepy folk. That's all right. Hopefully you'll get woken up a little bit with our speaker panel. Let's see where people are viewing from today. We got somebody from Tucson, Casa Grande, Vail. Awesome, you got two people from Vail. Buckeye. Very excited person from Gilbert. Lots of people around the Phoenix area and the suburbs. Somebody from California. Welcome from California. That's awesome. So we normally, in the past years, have done this at the zoo, and we realize that there's probably friends that live in other parts of the state or in other states that would love to be able to participate in this, and that's how we chose to do it virtually this year. All right, excellent. Let's go on to the next question. So this is just to help us get a little idea of the demographics of who's here. So it's okay if you don't want to answer any of the questions. Awesome. I love it. I don't know. That's awesome too. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. Again, another question just to figure out the demographics of who we've got. So answer however you'd like, and if you don't want to answer, that's okay too. Apparently I made this a word cloud. All right, I'm going to go on to the next one so that we don't get too far behind. Just asking for your grade. I see Tabitha has her cat with her. I wish I had my cat too. I have 4 cats, but they're not here right now. They're all doing something else. Alex is in 6th grade. Welcome, Alex. Nicole has 6 cats. That's awesome. I want to go to Nicole's house. Aw, Kinsley just lost the cat. We've got some dog lovers out there too. All right. What careers are you thinking of? You don't have to put every single career if you're one of, like me, when I was a teenager, I had so many different things that I was thinking about. So you don't have to put all of them. Lots of veterinarians. That does not surprise me. Nicole, did you just hear the birds singing in the background? There's a thrasher that likes to sit in an orange tree right outside my window. All right, we've got lots of variety here. All right. And just to keep us moving, I'm going to go on to the next one. I think we only have 2 more after this. I'm going to try to go on to the next one. It's not letting me go. Hold on one sec. Oh, that was the last one on the presentation. That's why it wouldn't let me go any further. Okay, I thought we were close to being done. All right, so let's keep on going. And I'm going to, hopefully you can see the slides now. Nope, because I haven't hit share yet. Okay, so this is our first group of speakers. Hillary, can you see that? Yes, okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is each of our speakers is here today to talk about their experience and their pathway and how they got to where they are. So we've let them kind of figure out how they want to tell their story on their own. So you're going to have lots of different approaches to this, I think. I'm really excited to hear what folks have to say. So what we're going to do is do 3 speakers back to back to back, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So as we're going, feel free to put questions in the chat or in the Q&A section, and Hillary and I will keep track of those, and we'll make sure to read them out to the speakers when it comes time. So just whenever you have a question, feel free to put it in that chat there. Other than that, so you can see we've got Kinley, Luis, and Mary, who are our first set of speakers, and I'm very excited to hear from them. So, Kinley, if you are ready, I am going to stop sharing my screen and let you go for it.
Okay, great. I will actually share my screen because I decided to do a presentation. Can you all hear me okay? Am I loud and clear? Okay, cool, perfect. Let me get this shared. All right, so you should see a picture of me looking off in the distance. Can everybody see that? Get a thumbs up from somebody. Okay, I'm gonna assume that's, okay, perfect, cool, thank you. Thank you for answering in the chat. And like Gabby said, please, if you have any questions during this process, please put them down in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer them during the Q&A part, but let's get going. So thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk with all of you and to kind of hear maybe more about what your interests are. Let's go to the next slide here. So my name is Kinley Reagan, and I'm a field conservation research technician at the Phoenix Zoo. But those are a lot of words, so I'm going to break it down for you and let you know a little bit more about what I do. So I study wildlife, and when I say wildlife, I mean anything from black bear, mountain lion, bobcat, ocelot, to tinier things like squirrels, skunks. I love skunks. And then we also are getting into studying more like birds and bats using acoustic technology. So what I mostly do is I use non-invasive technology. So that means things that are not going to bother the animals, like camera traps or acoustic recorders, which you can see a camera trap here on the tree behind me, kind of camouflaged in. To be able to observe animals in their natural habitat and try to learn more about them. So what this can look like is it's a lot of data analysis, a lot of time in the office, a lot of writing, but I also get to do some awesome field work. So on the left here, you can see me putting up a camera trap in a tree along the Arizona Trail in Arizona. This was in the Payson area. And then in the middle here, you can see I took out a group of volunteers to help me set cameras down in Sonora, Mexico, which was really exciting. So it's a lot of time in the field, some hiking, exploring, tracking animals. And then I also work in Costa Rica. And so this is a project in Costa Rica. On the right-hand side, you might see this big antenna, and that antenna is used for anti-poaching. So we have some illegal poaching of jaguar in Costa Rica, and we are creating a system that will detect gunshots to then let the park rangers know that a gunshot was detected and where that it was located to send out forces to try to protect that animal better. And then in the center here, you can see we work at a national park headquarters. That's a picture of me and the team that I get to work with down in Costa Rica at one of the park headquarters. So when we set up these camera traps, though, these are the pictures that we get to go along with it. So this is kind of like the flip side of the camera, the data that I then receive. And what do I do with this data, right? Because I set up these cameras and it's like, okay, well, what's next? So with this information, we can understand who's in the area, mountain lion, black bear, coati, jaguar, who it would expect to be in the area that might be missing, that we need to kind of look into more and do some more research on. And then other things like the habitat that might be important for them, what sites they're more present at, what sites they're less present at. And this is all to get at the idea of connectivity in areas to increase animal populations, right? So we want to make sure that animals can move effectively on the landscape and that we can continue to preserve their populations moving forward in the future. But the question here, I think today is like, how did I get here? And that's a great question because I did not know this job existed when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, wherever you are at your stage as a teen, I did not know that a job like this could exist. So I grew up in Arizona and my family was appreciative of the outdoors. We loved a good hike. We liked being out in nature, but I wouldn't say that we were a big outdoorsy family. I actually didn't go camping for my first time until I was 17. So the outdoors was something that I definitely appreciated, but wasn't necessarily familiar with. However, I always had kind of this affinity for wildlife. So I loved animals. I loved Nat Geo. I loved reading books about animals. I just always had this connection to the wildlife around me. And then in high school, I started taking more specific courses, which some of you might be familiar with, like biology, environmental sciences, psychology. And I always found myself kind of having this affinity more towards the ecology sections of my bio class. So in biology, you study anything from cells to the human body to plate tectonics to weather to climate change. And I always found myself really enjoying the later parts of the class when we were looking at wildlife interactions and ecology and how climate was going to impact these species. And so knowing that that was my favorite part of the course and always looking forward to that part, when I decided that college was the right choice for me, I wanted to look into what that information about ecology, where that could take me. So I decided to go to college, and I also decided to stay in state for financial reasons. And in doing that, I then started exploring the website on ASU about, okay, like what majors can I participate in now? And I ended up finding a major called Conservation Biology and Ecology at ASU. And when I was reading about that major, about how it integrates kind of social dynamics and it works with wildlife, and you study systems and the ecosystems, that just really resonated with me and got me very excited about taking further courses in that information. And it was just really exciting to finally see something that kind of connected with me. So I decided to go to ASU to study conservation biology and ecology. When I first got there, taking some classes, general classes, to get to know the concepts, right? And just like you do in high school or just like anybody would do in college. And I started to look into the professors in my programs more and to read papers on their work to try to understand, okay, what are they studying? What are they interested in? And how do I get to learn more about these areas? So I would read papers that my professors had written, and then I would email them and say, can I talk to you about these papers? Can I meet with you to discuss more about your career? And through doing that, I actually started working in a fly lab, which was not what I thought I would work in, but I was very excited for the opportunity. And this fly lab was actually looking at thermal tolerances, which means heat tolerances, with the idea of how much heat can these flies handle as a kind of a market for a marker for how climate change is going to impact animals. And I thought I wanted to do climate change research, so this was very exciting to be in this lab. So I started working in the fly lab, and that was a super great experience. And I worked really hard, and actually I got to help out in writing a paper, which was a great experience because I got to kind of see the entirety of the scientific process from helping out with the data collection to then writing up the results and all of that. And at the same time as doing the fly lab, I started volunteering at the Phoenix Zoo as an adult volunteer. And so I would work in the squirrel monkey exhibit, and I would help with the education team. And I got to engage with guests and talk about conservation and talk about my interests more with people. And it really started to help me think about where I wanted to go next in my career. And what I ultimately realized is, as much as I was appreciative for this fly lab experience, the sterile lab environment was not it for me. I think a lot of people do amazing work in the lab environment and learn some super interesting, important information that we need to know more about. And if that's what you want to do, that is absolutely amazing. And I totally support it. But for me, it just wasn't the perfect fit. And I think that that's a really important lesson to maybe take away from this, is trying new experiences and giving it your best and, sticking with your commitment, but then realizing, okay, this is not the best fit for me, and moving on to something else is just as important as finding that perfect yes, right? Because I was able to have my interests and start kind of crossing them off a little bit. Like, okay, I tried working in a sterile lab, that didn't fit quite right. And I tried studying insects, and that didn't fit quite right. So I was able to begin narrowing down what my interests were. And that's a great thing to do. So I was super appreciative of the experiences that I got to have to start kind of narrowing in my interests. So I finished out my commitment with the fly lab, which was helping get this paper done and helping manage some of the flies. And I then started reaching out to my professors again, looking for something new to do, because as I mentioned, I wanted to kind of explore different areas. And that's when one of my professors connected me with Dr. Jan Skipper, who was a wildlife biologist. And that intrigued me a ton. So I started reading a bunch of Dr. Skipper's papers and learning more about what a wildlife biologist was and what kind of questions they would study. And then I began working with him, volunteering with him. And I would sort the camera trap photos that I kind of showed you a couple of minutes ago for hours whenever I could to help support some of his projects. And after a couple months of sorting these camera trap photos and kind of earning my keep in the lab, I was then able to go out in the field with Dr. Skipper for the first time. So this is actually one of the first pictures of me out in the field. And I learned I kind of learned how to seriously hike. I'd done a lot of hiking on trails or with my family, but not kind of out in the wilderness. And so Dr. Skipper taught me a ton about, how to hike in nature, how to safely hike in nature, and then also about camera traps, because I'd read a ton of information about camera traps, but I had never put that into practice. So this was my first time putting that into practice, which was so fun and so interesting. And it finally clicked. And so it felt like this is what I was meant to be doing. I was excited every day and I was grateful to be able to be out in the field and to be asking these questions and to hear the rustling of deer in the forest. And it just finally felt like I had found kind of what I was very interested in. So I was super grateful for this opportunity. However, during this time, I still was a student and I still had bills to pay and responsibilities of my own. So on the side, I was also working at other organizations, both for financial reasons, but also for the experience, because I wanted to make sure that I did have this breadth of experience and that I didn't narrow down too early. So I worked at Sea Life Aquarium for a bit as an education specialist. I volunteered Arizona Game and Fish on their Black-footed ferret project a couple times. And then I also managed some clubs at ASU to try to engage more with students my age and kind of see what their interests were as well. But I mainly give all my work to working with Dr. Skipper, or all my time to working with Dr. Skipper in the field. And I also started taking on some more responsibilities because I loved it so much and I really wanted to show him that I was committed to these projects. So that led me to being able to start managing some of our field sites, which was super exciting. So I started managing our site in Sonora, Mexico, and this is one of the cameras that I set up down there. And a couple months later, I got to see kind of the results of my work, which was amazing photos of mountain lion using this log to cross over the river. Also down in the corner, you can see some bobcats using the same log. And then my personal favorite is our coatis. I love coatis, and so seeing the coatis kind of using all the different animals using this log to cross over the river was super interesting to me. And I became very connected to these projects. And because of that, I decided that I wanted to continue on working with them. And fortunately, there's a program at my university called a 4+1. And if you don't know what that is, that's totally fine. Again, I didn't know what that was. So you are in my shoes. But what a 4+1 is it has a master's program 1 year instead of 2. So a master's program is a degree that you can get after getting your undergrad. And typically it's a 2 or 3 year program, but the program at ASU allowed my senior year of undergrad to be my first year of my master's. And then I did 1 additional year. So it was 4 years of my undergrad plus 1 year of my master's. And this was a great opportunity for me because I was interested in finishing up some of these projects. And this would give me a little bit more time to delve more deeply into the analyses and finish up this project. So this is kind of the culmination of that work. We found over 20 species of mammals in this region. This is right at the borderlands in Sonora, Mexico, right along the border. And I got to explore amazing habitat like this Cajon Bonito is in the center here with the river flowing through it. And on the right-hand side is another wash that I got to explore. And I really got to dive into the research process from designing the study myself to carrying out all of the field work, to asking the questions, to then analyzing all the data and sorting all the photos and then writing up the results. And this was a great opportunity for me personally. And so I think that's another important aspect of kind of my journey is, and what I would recommend to all of you, is to do what works best for you. So if a 4+1 is what excites you, then go ahead and do it. But if 4+1 doesn't excite you, you will find your own pathway that excites you. And you should definitely work hard towards finding that pathway that is the best fit for you. So this was a great opportunity to finish up some of the loose ends of my undergraduate experience. And then it also made me a very strong candidate for the current position that I'm in at the Phoenix Zoo, because I had my master's, I understood study design and research elements, I understood analysis, and I also had a familiarity with the species that are in our region. And so that led me to my current position at the Phoenix Zoo as a field conservation research technician. And now I forgot to mention the most important part. I'm sorry. My master's, I also discovered the first jaguar in that specific region in 25 years. So that was very rewarding to be able to find the jaguar in one of our washes, one of my most favorite washes, and be able to confirm that jaguar are using that area as a connectivity corridor. Can't believe I forgot that part. That's my most favorite part. But anyway, so this all led me to my current position at the Phoenix Zoo as the field conservation research technician, where I now get to work on some of these projects, including connectivity and reconnecting habitat for wildlife and studying wildlife, both in Arizona and Mexico, and then also in Costa Rica, which is where that anti-poaching project that I talked about was. And this was my best pathway to now. But I think in this career field especially, there's no right way. It's just the best way for you to get to your dream position. And so whatever that looks like is perfectly okay. My tips of advice that I just want to pass on for when you're exploring this field or thinking about careers are the following 3. So say yes to new opportunities because that's when you're going to grow. And when I say new opportunities, I mean the opportunity to work in the Fly Lab. I said yes because it was a great choice and it was something I hadn't done before. And what a great opportunity to do that. And then when Dr. Skipper offered me to go out in the field with him, I said yes because what a neat way to explore that realm and to see if it was a right fit for me. So make a safe yes decision and say yes to new opportunities so that you can find out what your interests are and what your needs are. And then also volunteer and try new things when you can. So volunteering was a huge way for me to understand more about the field, my interests, and where I could go within it. So I volunteered at the Phoenix Zoo, I volunteered with Arizona Game and Fish, I volunteered with a bunch of organizations across the valley just to get both more experience in those areas and then also knowledge of what my interests or future careers could look like. And then the last one is do your best, fill out your commitments. If you say you're going to, work somewhere for 6 weeks, 6 months, try to complete your commitment to your best ability, but don't be afraid to switch it up, right? So I completed my Fly Lab commitment. I did what they asked of me and worked my best. But then at the end of the day, I said, thank you so much for this opportunity, but it just is not the right fit for me. And I moved on to something else. Your time is so valuable. And so valuing your own time and making sure that you are always working towards your goals is the goal here, right? For you to find that career that's the best fit for you. So these are my 3 tips of advice, if I may pass them on. Say yes to new opportunities, volunteer as much as you're able to, or work in new positions as much as you're able to, and then do your best. But also it's okay if you tried something and it didn't work. It's okay to say thank you and to move on to the next opportunity. And yeah, so that's my career at the Phoenix Zoo. And this is my contact information if you want to reach out, but also I'm gonna hang around for the Q&A portion of this. So please drop those questions in the chat or comments in the chat. And I look forward to talking with you guys in the Q&A section and passing it on to the next wonderful presenter.
All right. Thank you so much, Kinley. That was awesome. There's lots of chatter in the chat box, just really celebrating what you're doing and the great pictures that you're showing. We do have some questions that we'll ask you during the Q&A. So thank you so much. And now I'm going to welcome Luis to the stage, so to speak. So whenever you are ready.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Okay. I am also going to share a presentation. Hold on, let me see if I can get it started. Can we all see that? Perfect. Okay. All right. Okay. So hello, everybody. My name is Luis. So I thought I'd start my presentation just going over, what exactly my background is in science and where I am, and then I will get a little bit about into like what it is I actually do and how I got there. So right now I'm a PhD student at Arizona State University. I'm currently in my second year, about to be my third year. It goes by very quickly. And I was at Arizona State for my undergrad as well, where I also got my bachelor's in conservation biology and ecology. That picture there is me graduating from my undergrad career. But I also worked at Sea Life Arizona in the education department, just like Kinley. We actually probably worked at different times. And then I also worked at Audubon, Arizona, which it's like a bird sanctuary here in the valley. And I did that actually in high school. So that was something that I did to prepare myself for college and getting some experience even before I went to ASU. But just to kind of show you what some of the images here, on the right there is me tagging a green sea turtle off the coast of Baja California in Mexico. And so I was there for a study abroad opportunity through ASU, where we were looking at sea turtle populations and other marine megafauna in the area, like whale sharks and sea lions and other things like that. So that was a really great opportunity that I got through my program to get some marine experience here in Arizona. Something that you'll find very interesting about my career is that I am a marine biologist and I've never left Arizona to live anywhere else. I've lived here my whole life, but I'm still a marine biologist. So you guys can do anything you want in any part of the world, really. Lots of opportunities in all kinds of weird places. And then down there is the group of us in the same location. That was after we went diving around the coast. We're working with some fishermen in the area who were looking for mussels. And so we got to do some sustainable mussel harvesting also along the coast of Baja California, which is a really, really cool experience. And so the reason why I showed that picture is because, hold on. I'm in a interesting part of biology in that I'm interested not only in ecosystems and animals, but I'm also interested in their relationship to human populations. And so I wanted to introduce this concept of ecosystem services because it is something that is a really big part of my work and what it is that I do. And so my belief is really that people are just as much a part of the ecosystem as the species and the animals that they are next to, because we interact with each other and we take things from each other and we support each other in all kinds of different ways. And so for coral reef ecosystem, because that is what I do my research on as a marine biologist on coral habitat, people rely on those ecosystems for all kinds of things, such as food, protection from ocean storms. People love to look at them, so they go there for like diving opportunities, some snorkeling, which brings in lots of money for lots of different communities and countries and states. And so they're really, really important for lots of different reasons, and things that impact the ecosystem and the animals that are in those ecosystems ultimately impact us as well. And so I'm interested in those like social ecological connections about what does species loss mean for people? What does ecosystem degradation mean for communities? All of those things. And I focus specifically on coral species. And so here are just a couple of different corals that you can find in the Caribbean region, which is where my research takes place. And I'm interested in what would happen if these species were to disappear. And so kind of connecting what it is these species do for us and for the ecosystems so that we can understand what extinction could mean for people in terms of like, how would this affect our food sources? How would this affect tourism? How would this impact the ways that people get protected from like natural phenomena like storms and hurricanes and things like that. And so understanding what extinction means for people is something that not a lot of people do. And, we kind of think about the arbitrary, like species are declining globally, but we don't really know what that could mean in terms of like its impact on us and on ecosystems as well. And so I do this work working in collaboration with the IUCN Red List. And so I don't want to go too much into detail about my research because it can get really complicated. But I do want to introduce what the Red List is because it's a really great organization. It's a non-governmental organization that works across the entire world. And essentially what their goal is to list every species that we know exists or that we know that has been recorded and figure out how threatened they are in terms of like likelihood that they might go extinct in the future. And they do that through a variety of different ways. But this little tree here shows how the Red List categorizes species. And so if we go from like the light green up to the warmer colors, so least concerned species would be species that are doing just fine. Their populations are healthy. There are lots of individuals. They have a large habitat range. And then we move towards like critically endangered, and those would be species where there's not a lot of them left, and they may be concentrated in like only a small part of the world. And so we're concerned about their potential extinction into the future. And then of course, there are species that have already gone extinct or only exist in like zoos and aquaria, which would be extinct in the wild. And we do this for the corals. So I'm part of the team at ASU because ASU has a really awesome partnership with the Red List system. So we do assessments for the Red List for all kinds of different groups of species, and the corals are one of them. I believe we also are doing some groups of fishes, also desert plants. We have like lots of people at ASU doing cacti and like figuring out how threatened they are. And so ASU has a really, really close partnership with the Red List system, which is great. And so this is just some ways that we do that. And I don't want to get too much into this, but yeah, we just use information about like climate change, which is what this map here shows, like little parcels of reef habitat and how they might be affected by future warming events. And we also think about like overall changes in coral cover from different parts of the world. And so this is just showing some areas off the coast of Brazil and South America and how they might be changing in terms of overall coral cover, which is indication of how much the habitat is changing over time. And so really what I'm working on in terms of my PhD is thinking about species and linking them to how they support ecosystem functions. Like in this image here, like these communities of corals kind of work together in order to form habitats for all kinds of species like the sharks there. And so I want to know, what does each individual species contribute to that ecosystem function? And then ultimately, how that ecosystem works and does natural processes ultimately results in things that we as people benefit from, like fishes. So we can't have a healthy fishing industry without a healthy reef system. And so species loss could ultimately impact how we as people get food and live our daily lives. And so that's mainly what I'm doing in terms of my PhD work. And so that was a lot, I'm sure. But I also want to get into, how did I even get here? How did I get to this point where I'm researching corals in the middle of the desert, right? So I think part of my story, at least a big part of it, comes from being in Barrett the Honors College, because it really helped me prepare for a PhD. I'm going to start by saying a PhD is a really, really long commitment. It's about like 5 or 6 years that you are basically committing towards completing a project of some sort. And so in order to kind of understand that that was what I wanted to do and that research was for me, Barrett the Honors College really helped me figure out that this was a path that I was interested in. Because part of being in the Honors College was that I had to write an undergraduate thesis, which is very similar to what you would have to do in grad school. So like for your master's or for your PhD. And so that was a really great opportunity for me to think about, is research for me? Do I like writing like these papers? Do I like reading articles? Do I like learning new techniques about statistical analysis? All of those things were things that I had to do in my undergrad experience because I was in the Honors College and I was writing this thesis for my graduation. The other great thing that I think is invaluable was the fact that like through the Honors College, I had to take all kinds of honors courses, which sometimes are led by the professor of the course. So they would basically take you in a small group of other honors students and kind of work with you on a different project that you would do during the class that's separate from like everybody else's required work. And so that really gave me an opportunity to, learn about professors that were in the field that I was interested in, get really close with them, establish a relationship with them. And later those people ended up becoming great letters of recommendation for when I was applying for my PhD. And I don't think, I would have made those connections if I wasn't for those courses that I was in and I was enrolled in. That helped me make those connections with all kinds of people in different fields. And the other thing that really set me on my path was that I was actually in a course called Conservation of Biodiversity in my undergrad, and it was taught by my professor, Sharon Hall. She is a professor at ASU who studies urban ecology and work in Arizona related to species interactions with people. And so I really was interested in her work because she was also thinking about the way that different people of different backgrounds interact with nature. And so she was interested in like people who come from like marginalized groups, like people in Hispanic populations or in impoverished communities. How did they interact with their environment and the species that are in Arizona and Phoenix differently from people who maybe are more well off and come from more like wealthy communities. And so I talked to her after class one day and we're just like, I think your work is really cool. And I'm from Phoenix and I think like that intersection between the social and the ecological is super cool and super interesting. And she offered to become my advisor for my undergrad career. And so for 3 years, I worked with her on my honors thesis. And like that amount of time of working with a professor was just amazing experience. I couldn't have gotten to where I am now if it wasn't for her help. And like it all started with a conversation after class one day. And so you never really know where you're going to make connections and who is going to help you with your career. So anytime you feel like, oh, this is something super interesting to me, it kind of sparks something in you. You want to go for it because you never know where that will take you. And it also isn't a bad thing if it doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes those conversations don't necessarily lead to a great opportunity, but a lot of the times they might, or they could lead you to a different opportunity that wasn't what you thought it was, but you might also be interested in. And so something that I encourage is just talking to people who you think are interesting or who are doing work that is super interesting to you. And so these images down here, though, also were from my undergrad career. The image on the left is me in Costa Rica. I was doing some tree planting in a reserve to help like reestablish connectivity for sloths because there was like gaps in the forest. And so they wanted to replant some trees so that the sloths could get connections from different populations that have been separated from clear cutting. And then the other two images are also from my experience in Mexico, back in Baja California. The one in the middle there was after we did the turtle tagging, and the one on the right is us talking to those fishermen, talking about how they sustainably harvest fish populations, and they try to use like techniques that don't damage the ecosystem, like different nets that other people use that can hurt corals or can actually accidentally catch other species that they're not targeting. And so I don't have a lot of images for this, but this one is really about like choosing your experiences wisely and like picking classes and jobs that can ultimately help you get to where you want to go. So when I was in my undergrad, I was doing my conservation biology degree, but I also really wanted to explore other options in other fields that also interested me. So I ended up getting a minor in Spanish as well as in sustainability. And then I, towards the end of my career, ended up also getting my certificate in environmental education. And so I was actually in multiple different schools for my 4 years of undergrad. So I was in the education department. I was in the School of Sustainability. I was in the language department. I had my foot in all kinds of different doors just to kind of peek in to see like, oh, would this be something that I would be interested in more? But ultimately, what it ended up helping is kind of establishing further this like social ecological connections that I ultimately made for the work that I do now. Thinking about science in other languages for Spanish, and how to interact with the environment sustainably, and also how to teach people what it means to be like a good environmental steward, and like what their relationship to nature could be through education. And that really helped like beef up my application for my PhD program, because I am in the bio and society degree, which is really about like connecting life sciences to actual real world problems for human communities. And so all of these classes that I took and all of these degrees that I got really helped solidify that I was a really good candidate for this program. And so I encourage you guys also to do that. Kind of take classes and get experience in all kinds of different fields, because you never know what intersections you could create and what novel, cool, like pathways you could be leading yourself towards. Like I've had lots of classmates who did like biology and art, and like part of their projects are like creating murals and creating awesome like infographics for different environmental problems around the world. And so there's lots of different ways you can intersect all of your interests and like just take those classes as an undergrad, because that is going to help you ultimately make cool new experiences and ultimately a career in something that you find super interesting. And in terms of like how I got like money on the side, I really needed to get to work while I was an undergrad. So and in terms of like what you can do for like having no experience in the field of any kind, you really want to think about like what kind of jobs can I get now that can ultimately get me the experience that would let me be in a field that I am interested in. So my history with like work outside of school kind of led me to working at a bookstore because I just needed money at the time. But that ultimately helped me get into working at a pet store and like being like the animal handler there, because I had the retail experience that helped me get my foot in the door for a different type of job, which ended up giving me the experience that I needed to get for the aquarium position that I ultimately got, because I had experience handling animals, I had experience working with guests, all of those things that I didn't before helped me secure that position at the aquarium, which is where I got a lot of my experience working with marine organisms and talking to the public about issues related to the marine environment, all of those things that I ultimately ended up using for my PhD program and were part of my application towards the PhD. And so I thought it would be a good idea to also talk about, if you guys are interested in the kind of work that I do or similar kinds of work related to like ecology and population dynamics, all of those things. These are some of the skills and experiences that you probably should be on the lookout for or should be thinking about. So for my work, I do a lot of like working with different kinds of software and programming tools. And so for a lot of my analysis of corals, I do like mapping. And so for the red list system, we have to know like where are the corals found and create maps that demonstrate like where they are found throughout the world. And so we have to actually make maps and edit maps depending on if people decide that the species range needs to be expanded or the range needs to be smaller than it was before. And so ArcGIS mapping software is a skill that you should be on the lookout for if that's kind of the field you're looking into. And that goes beyond just like what I do. Lots of people in my field and in ecology do some sort of mapping techniques. And so that's a great skill to have, as well as some sort of understanding of statistical tools like R. Those really help with, getting your data and consolidating it into ways that, you can find correlations and relationships between what it is that you're studying. And I use Excel all the time. So as much as I don't like Excel, it's something that is a really big part of my of my work as a PhD student and the field that I'm in, and also with the Red List system. I have like 50 different Excel files for different kinds of projects that I've been a part of. But overall, like how I got to my PhD and how I got into the field that I'm in, I really wanted to be in the marine field. So I made sure that I had marine experience. And that was through working at the aquarium. That was through my study abroad opportunities that took me to places that I could get that marine experience, do the diving, do the snorkeling. That's things that I don't have the opportunity to do here necessarily in Phoenix or in Arizona in general. But I looked out for those opportunities because I knew that was the field that I wanted to be in. And so that was really important to me. And then again, just getting back to, I'm interested in like the social ecological interactions. And so I demonstrated through my PhD application that, I have experience doing that. I've taken the courses, I've did the study abroads that were related to those intersections. I really sold myself in that, like, I am a perfect candidate for this program because I've already been doing those connections and I've been interested in that from the beginning of my career as a college student. And then ultimately, when you want to do a PhD, you have to demonstrate, at least in some capacity, that you can take on a research project. And so because I was in Barrett the Honors College, I was able to show that I can handle creating a project and creating a research project. And so that helped me become a really good candidate for my PhD. And so just to leave you with some advice, just like Kinley did, I think my advice is basically almost the same. But I just would really encourage everyone to foster as many connections as you can. You never know where they will lead you. Like all kinds of different opportunities are available to us, and we just don't know about them because we're not talking to the right people, or we just don't know where that information would be. And if you meet and talk to someone, they can really help open lots of doors for you. And then also just explore all of your interests. It's totally fine to be interested in science and ecology and animals in general, but also explore other options. Because I saw some people say that they were interested in like physics or astronomy or writing. There's lots of ways that those things could intersect. And so I wouldn't say that you ignore those things that you're interested in, but you actually pursue them as well, because it will help kind of figure out what it is you actually love to do. And then, of course, it's okay to walk away from something, because it's all about what it is that you enjoy and what it is that you like to do. You don't have to commit to everything. It's great to have the experience, but then maybe at the end of it, you'd be like, oh, this was great, but I think I want to move on and do something else. And that's totally great. That's totally fine. And then also just advocate for yourself. Really, really figure out how to like sell yourself in all kinds of situations. You want to take those experiences that you've had and figure out a way to really sell it and say, like, I'm a great candidate because I did this, and this is exactly the kind of work that like would help, me be a great PhD student, would help me be a great like person at this job or this position. Just really figure out what it is that you've done and how it fits into some of the goals or some of the skills that you would need in whatever field that you're interested in. But yeah, I will end it there and we can move on to the next presentation.
Thank you so much, Louise. That was fantastic. And lots of folks interested in marine biology and hearing your story. So we really appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to move right on to Mary because I know that she has things to get to. So we're going to let her hop on and do her talk right now, and then we'll do our Q&A after that. So Mary, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I have a short, it's not really a presentation, it's more like a video tour of the natural history collections where I work at, so you can get an idea of what it's like. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. Is that coming through okay? All right, so this is the natural history collections. I feel like I should start by saying that I just started here in the last year or so, and my majors are also conservation biology and ecology, as well as earth and environmental studies. So I'm a senior right now. I'm still in my undergraduate career, so I haven't made it in the world yet. But I do work at this place right here called the Bio Collections, or the ASU Biology Knowledge Integration Center. So we really focus on essentially keeping an up-to-date catalog of natural life and biodiversity. So the entire facility, really cool, by the way. I'll drop my email in the chat before I go. So if any of you want to take a tour, you can feel free to come through and I'll show you around. But this is the building. It's a bunch of different collections. So we have the insect collection right here. This is the insect lab that I work in. I mostly work with insects because I think they're really cool and underrated, to be honest. We'll step in. Hopefully you can get a good idea. It's not as good as being there in person, I know, but hopefully you'll get the gist of it. So this is the lab where a lot of the researchers work. There'll just be drawers and drawers of insects, all types of insects, tiny ones and big ones. Most of these are going to be weevils, which are beetles that have these long snouts. That's what the researchers at my lab focus on, essentially cataloging species, identifying them and naming them. My lab coordinator, Dr. Franz, he has actually identified and named, he's found new species, and he says it so casually, like it's just a day in the life for him. It's very cool. This is the actual insect collection. So these are called compactors. They're these big shelves that have wheels on them so that you can, move them around. I thought those only existed in movies, but they are real. So if you open one up, for example, and then you can step inside, they're all organized by phylogeny, which is the relatedness between species. So we can go down a specific family, which is a subgroup of species, and then see all of the individuals within that group. These drawers are actually not a great example of what a normal drawer would look like, though they are really cool. You'll notice that all the beetles don't look related, right? They're all different. This is because private collectors will donate their collections to us so that they can be used for science. But if we're going to look at, let's see, I think I'm going to go to moths next because I really like moths. You'll see that this drawer, so Lepidoptera is the order of butterflies and moths. These ones are going to be organized the way the rest of the collection is. So when you open it up, you'll go all the way, you can find all the way down to species, exactly what's going to be in the drawer. And then there's actual insects. So these are actual preserved insects that were collected out in the field. And keeping them allows us to get a good idea of A, how species are changing, how population dynamics are changing, if there are like human influence factors, and also if there are morphological differences within a species, based on location. Morphological would mean like the physical characteristics of each species. So that's the insect lab. I work back there, so I'll pin insects. We'll go out into the field and collect insects, all with the goal of better understanding biological life, right? Because if we don't collect these species, we'll never understand the true breadth of what we have on this planet. I think it's something like 17 or 20% of species that we've lost already on the planet. I think that number might be completely wrong, so don't quote me. But this is the freezer right here. This is actually how we store our insects. It's very cool. I guess since we're a little limited on time, I'll kind of just get into like how I got into this position. I actually had a very similar experience to Luis, where I took a conservation and biodiversity class and I connected with Dr. Sharon Haw. She was the one who promoted the opportunity to work with the Phoenix Zoo. So I also work with the Phoenix Zoo under Kinley. So we work together, although definitely she's the expert and I'm just like the assistant. And then through the zoo, it got me in contact with the people who run the bio collections, and I got to do a summer program with them, which was actually incredible. So if you get the chance, if you come to ASU, or even if you don't come to ASU, if you go to a local community college, or if you don't end up going to college, regardless, it's open to everyone. It's called the Jedi Bio Collections Fellowship. It is specifically targeted at like underrepresented groups. So if you feel like you qualify for that, let me know, shoot me an email and I can send you some information a few years down the line if you'd like to apply. But it's been really amazing. So I work with them doing outreach, and I guess my piece of advice would be to always apply. So even if you think that you're underqualified for something, still apply, because you're not going to know until you actually give it a shot. And worst case scenario, you take another, you would have taken that time to refine your resume, practice your communication skills, have a practice interview. Like there's really no loss. I used to get too intimidated and think that I'm not qualified for something and never apply for it. But then you'll never know. You miss, what is the saying? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. The second piece of advice I would tell you is to keep an academic resume, something that's separate from your other work endeavors. They can be combined, especially at the beginning. If you don't have much and you just want to show that you have some experience in a work environment, that's fine. But at some point, your goal should be to have an academic resume that has all of your academic endeavors, volunteering, internships, stuff like that, because it really looks good for you. And on that note, also ask a professional that's in the field to look over that. It's a great way to network. It's a great way to show genuine interest in them, their work, and their experience. And then it's also a great way to make sure that you're presenting your best foot. You're putting your best foot forward when you're applying to stuff. And I guess my last piece of advice, we're kind of walking through, I'm just letting it run so you guys can see the rest of the collection. This is the mammal collection. My last piece of advice would be to just be an active and enthusiastic learner. So be knowledge hungry. I think the reason I got that opportunity with Dr. Hall was similar to Luis was mentioning. I just asked questions and I showed a genuine, authentic interest. And you'd be surprised how uncommon that is a lot of the time when people are in a lot of classes and they have a stressful, busy schedule. They don't show a lot of, or at least they don't take the time to show their authentic interest. And stuff like that really stands out to potential employers, people you might network with, professors who might hook you up with the cool job. So yeah, that would be my advice. And I'm going to drop the email in the chat. So if you have any questions, let me know. If you want a tour, let me know, because it's way cooler in person. And if you're interested in anything else that has to do with the collections, let me know, because it's a big passion of mine. But I think that's where I'm going to leave it off for now. Hopefully you guys got a good gist of what I work on.
All right, thank you, Mary. If you have time for one question, we got one specific one for you about the preserving of the insects and how is that done, and do they eventually fall apart?
That's a really good question. So it depends on the insect, right? So there's some insects that are hard-bodied. Those are pretty easy to store because when we collect them out in the field, we put them directly into ethanol. The ethanol keeps their joints from stiffening up until we have the time to sit down and prepare them, pin them. We usually put a pin through them and then set them to dry so that they'll stay like that for hundreds of years. Some of our specimens are so old, older than I am. But for a soft-bodied insect, for example, they would have to stay in the ethanol. So we have like cool little vials. I don't know if you saw with the reptiles that were in there, how they had the big jars. It's kind of similar to that with the insects. If they're soft-bodied, we just keep them in the cool little vials with ethanol, and that keeps them preserved as well.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for that tour. That was really fun. And I know you need to head off because you are actually at work right now. So thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Rest of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to put that email in the chat. So please don't hesitate. Let me know if you would love a tour. And if transportation is an issue, we can try to arrange something. Like, I really want to make sure that you guys get the opportunity to see the bugs if you'd like. Oh, wait, I need to send it to everyone. And then definitely send me an email. Feel free to reach out with anything.
There it is. All right. Thanks so much, Mary.
Yeah, no problem. Bye, everyone.
Bye. All right. And Louise and Kinley, if you don't mind turning your cameras back on, we do have a couple questions that came through for you. All right. So this question came up when Kinley was talking, but I think it'd be good for both of you to answer is how many hours a week do you work in your jobs?
Well, so my job now is a full-time position at the zoo. So I work, depends on the week, whether we're in the fields or we're at home, at our home base at the zoo, but it's always about 40 hours a week. So full-time position. Louise, how about you? Grad school is a little bit different, huh?
Yeah. So something that we as grads always encourage with each other is we don't work more than 20 hours. And it can be a little complicated because it's not like a regular job where you have like, the expectation is that you're there from 9 to 5. Like we work as TAs and stuff. So those hours can be really weird and it's like on your own time. But you're getting paid for 20 hours. So don't work more. If you ever do PhD, just do the 20 hours a week that you're being paid for. Otherwise, you're giving away a lot of your time and like you have lots of other responsibilities. So 20 hours is what I would say.
That's really great advice. Start off by protecting your time. It's really important throughout your entire career. Okay, a specific question for Louise is how much more difficult is honors college than the typical classes? And would you recommend honors college for someone who has an interest in taking AP and honors classes in high school?
Yeah, so I did not take AP in high school, so I'm not sure how comparable it is. But in terms of like the workload for ASU, at least is what I'm familiar with. Basically, if you want to do your honors courses, you just need to have about like 36 credits, I believe, of honors credit. And you can either get that through specific honors classes. So those would be classes that other students who aren't in the honors college, they're not able to take. Or you could, in your regular courses, you could ask, like if you were taking like an intro biology class, ask the professor, can I get honors credit for this? And typically, if they say yes, all that you would need to do is do like an extra side project or an extra like assignment, and that would give you your honors credit. And so it is a little extra work, and you do have to think about it at least through your whole career and making sure you get those credits at the end of your graduation by your graduation. But I wouldn't say it's like super difficult. So if you're interested or already taking honors credits in high school and you feel that workload is you're able to handle that workload, then I think college would be very similar. But if you've taken AP or you're going to take AP and honors classes and you feel like you're just not going to be able to handle it, I just wouldn't recommend it. And those opportunities that I talked about, at least, would still be available, but the honors college makes it so that those opportunities or those experiences are part of the process. You just might have to go the extra mile if you weren't in honors classes to get those connections and do those projects and stuff like that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Kinley, 2 questions for you. So one is, which elephant are you pictured in? Was that in the photo with you, if you can remember?
I think somebody put in the chat that it was Indu, and I think it might have been Indu. I never thought I would forget, to be honest. And so I will have to text my friend that I was with, because she was actually the elephant volunteer keeper at the time, which is why I got to go back and say hello. So she will know. And I'm ashamed that I've forgotten, but I think it was Indu.
It looked like Indu to me too. So
Okay, cool. I
I
was like, it wasn't Sheena, and so I think it was Indu.
Okay, awesome. Another question for you is, what kind of data collection did you get when you were in the Fly Lab? Was it behavior, or was it DNA, or something else that you were looking at?
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting question, because what we would do with these flies is they had unique genetic lineages. Also, I did this work, I think about 6 years ago now, so bear with me as I try to jog my memory a bit. But they had unique genetic lineages, and what we were looking at is, if we increase temperature or decrease oxygen, how will the flies be successful? So we would put them in these testing chambers, and some of them were tested against increased temperature, and some of them were tested against lower levels of oxygen, and then we would see how successful they were at flying. And so if they could fly, we would consider that a success, meaning that they could tolerate that temperature or the oxygen level. If they were not successful at flying and struggled a little bit more, then we would understand that meant that they would not be successful at those temperatures or at that oxygen level. So that's kind of the data we were looking at. And it was super interesting. We basically found that different genetic lineages had different responses or different levels of success to the different temperatures, and that most were able to tolerate higher temperatures, but that they became, the higher it got, the more they struggled, indicating that climate change is going to have an impact on flies. And so if it has an impact on flies, we can only assume that it'll trickle on from there. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Now you got one big question for both of you. It's always the question that's on everyone's minds. You can answer it however you would like, but a lot of folks are interested in what the pay is like in your roles, and Louise, specifically for you, working only the 20 hours as a PhD student, can you survive off of that? Is that enough, or do you have to have supplemental, that kind of thing?
Louise, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, I can go first. Yes, I am able to survive off of how much I get paid, and I'm fine letting you guys all know. I get about like 24,000 a year, about that much. And so I get paid every other week, and it's about like a $900 check every week or every other week. And so every month I'm like about, what did I say? Like $1,800. And so I have 2 roommates. And so that's how a big part of how I survive is like cutting cost of living. But in terms of like, everyday spending, I can handle that. Like I can get my food, I can go out, I can, do activities and buy things that I like. And that's mainly because I have my roommates. And so you just got to, play smart about like, where are you going to be spending the most, and like, what are you comfortable with? Lots of people I know also live at home. So that's something to also consider. If you feel like that's not going to be enough for you. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But yes, definitely money is a big part of a big issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And when I was doing my master's, which is a graduate degree as well, I also had roommates and, lived smartly, right? So you budget, you figure out what you can and can't afford, you save up for things. And it worked out. I also did work a side job a little bit too, just to kind of help supplement some of that. And then now working at the zoo, yes, I am able to afford my my lifestyle. Again, you budget, you plan things out. I think that's a big part about going into, if this is what you're interested in, into like the wildlife world, is that a lot of times it's nonprofits, right? And so we all are doing the best we can with the money that we're receiving, but also trying to change the world and do research is expensive, and care for animals is expensive. And so I think we lead with our passion a little bit more than other maybe more like lucrative positions. But there also are, if money is something you're concerned about, there are other positions within this realm of work, within conservation, within wildlife, that are a little bit more supportive financially. And you just, it's a balancing system, right? So at the zoo, I do make above minimum wage, so that's amazing, and that I'm happy about. And it's I think you can make it work if that's what you're interested in. And always happy to answer questions about this more specifically over email too. And also, I'm a proponent for advocating for your time. I think your time is important. I think you are valuable. You are important. Your time off is important. But also sometimes there are little side hustles that you can do that don't take up too much time, but then help you feel a little bit more comfortable financially. And that's maybe where I've leaned towards, is trying to balance working my full-time job, having a little side hustle just to make myself a little bit more comfortable, but also still having the integrity of my time and making sure that I'm getting adequate sleep and taking care of myself and seeing family and enjoying my time. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Those are great answers. Thank you both for that. Okay, well, I think we actually are right on time with our schedule. So I want to say another huge thank you to Luis and Kinley for joining us and sharing your time with us. And we are going to take a 10-minute break. So if everyone can join us back here at 10:40, we'll have our second speakers panel. Hey, welcome back. Hopefully everybody's back. It's hard to see when we can't see you all, but we are getting ready for our next speaker panel. So I'm going to pass it off to Hillary, who is going to get us started.
Are we doing another poll first?
We'll do it afterwards.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Welcome to our second speaker panel then, everyone. We have three, once again, wonderful speakers to tell us a little bit about their experiences and give some advice to all of you. So the three people we have joining us today are Zara, we have Randy, and we have Marissa. And that is the order that we will go in today. Now, Zara, who is going to be our first speaker panelist, is actually traveling and out of town, but she is joining us. She did, however, send us a video that we can play that can do her presentation, but then she'll be available for questions and any other supplement material. Zara, did you have anything you wanted to say first, or do you just want us to go ahead with the video?
Hi everyone, and can everybody hear me all right? Okay, good. It's so nice to see you guys all here, and actually you guys are asking really interesting questions, so I'm kind of scared of you guys now. The video that I sent was, I realized that I cannot really tell everything in 15 minutes, so I tried to do what I best do, and it's graphic design. So I designed everything together and made something so it will keep you awake, and I'm on my second copy too, so it might help, and you will learn something about me, and you can always keep asking questions in between. I'm always ready to answer, and afterwards I'll talk with you guys a bit, show you some pictures, and that's it. So I hope you enjoy the video.
Okay, hold on. I'm working on it. Give me 1 second.
Hi everyone, and welcome to my story. My name is Zara, and I'm a wildlife coordinator with the Arizona Game and Fish Department out of Yuma office. I am a wildlife biologist by profession, and I have more than 13 years of experience in the field from India, Africa, and the United States. My story is a little bit different. Let's start from the beginning. I was born in Chicago, but my parents moved to India when I was a year old. I was brought up in India with my 2 older sisters. As a kid, I was active and playful. I was creative, and I was curious and outdoorsy. And I loved to play video games. But I had my bad days. I was unsure of my aim. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. Some days I wanted to be a magician. Other days, an astronaut. And yet another days, an activist. But I never stopped exploring my options. With an open mind, I kept moving forward. Growing up, I loved nature and outdoors. I figured I wasn't made for an office job. So I had to find a career which would help me stay outdoors instead of behind a desk. I never liked pets. In fact, I'm scared of most of the animals. Then how and why did I get into wildlife science? Wildlife science is not all about animals. In addition, it has to do a lot about our environment as a system and how to conserve the entire system as a whole. So, I learned the science behind it, and I joined the master's degree program. It has its own math, chemistry, physics, and biology all together. I was the only woman in my class, which in itself was a challenge at times in an Indian academic environment. But that didn't stop me, and I strived to earn a gold medal in my master's degree program for securing first position. Which tells you that you can do anything if you put your mind to it and you're stubborn enough to achieve it. There was no stopping me next. Not only I worked on tigers, elephants, bears, leopards, and many large animals and birds, but I also worked on insects and their environment. Now I train others for wildlife surveys and techniques. I published research papers on my work that helped the newer generation. But since I got all my education from India, it was super hard for me to get a job in the US. Everything I knew about the United States was through comic books, cartoons, TV series, and movies. There were still many challenges for moving ahead in my career. I worked for 9 years in India in the field, but I only got rejections from the US for wildlife jobs. In total, I got nearly 3,000 rejections in 10 years. Even so, I never stopped applying and studying. After many years when I couldn't get any US job while staying in India, I decided to move to the United States and try my luck from there. After coming to the US, I worked my way up through many sales companies, grocery stores, and a pest control company before landing a wildlife job. Don't forget, I already had my master's degree when I did all these low-paying jobs, but I never let it discourage me. I didn't have a driver's license in India, but I had to get one to work in the US. When I finally got my first wildlife job in the US, I realized I never applied for it. They approached me because of my online resume. Hunting is illegal in India, but in the US, to be a wildlife specialist, I had to learn to handle guns for the job. I had never held a gun before. Now, this is me. I am not a superwoman. Remember, I'm still afraid of most animals, including the ones I have worked on. But this is also me. Which tells us you are your only limitation, and no one else can tell you what you are capable of. I hope you all enjoyed my story and will listen to your own self to overcome hardship with a positive attitude all your life. And only because you're scared doesn't mean you can't do it. Always remember, you are your biggest critic. Choose a career in life that you will enjoy doing and not what others tell you to do. That's the key to having an enjoyable career and a peace of mind. My career choice not only helped me travel across India, but also to work in 3 continents, learning about their ecosystem and variety of plants and animals present. Thank you, everyone. I will answer any questions that you might have now.
All right, I see that most of you enjoyed it, and I'm really glad I spent a lot of time on that, as you can tell. But I also see that most of the people want to pet a tiger. So just so you know, that tiger was rescued it was in Atlanta, and it was in a rescue center. So it was basically someone's pet, and then they left it in the wild. So he was rescued from the wild while he was still not really a baby, but a subadult, which is also very big. So they rescued him and they brought him to the rescue center. And that's where I saw him, and he was used to people. So it was easy while he was awake. I have touched tigers before, but they're usually asleep because you have to put a tranquilizer in them and then collar them, or, change their color or treat anything or anything like that. So that's when I have actually, you have worked with bears. That's cool. I have worked with bears, but I have never had to collar them, but I have worked for their surveys. I have seen a lot of bear. The bear in India are sloth bear. If you search them on Google, they're the notorious ones to play with people, and they're the most dangerous ones. And it's pretty cool. So what I'm doing right now is I'm working as a landowner relations program specialist, and my job is to make sure to help the landowners enough for them not to go against the wildlife, to close their water source or poison their food or something like that. So I help them with fixing things around the land, people, like their wells or fences that would benefit animals too. And I also do animal surveys through helicopters, fixed wing planes. I also do some graphic designing work on the side to advertise my work. I also enjoy doing it, but I really like doing it. I'm good at it, but the thing is, I don't want to pursue that as a career, which also tells you it doesn't matter if you're really good at something unless you enjoy it. I don't think it's really worth to, because I don't want to sit behind a desk and keep doing the graphic design. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of eye power for you to be able to work on a graphic design job. I also work on GIS, help with mapping of the projects. That's also something that I enjoy. And the only reason I try to show you that I'm scared of something, but I still enjoy doing it, is that it's like anything else, anybody else in this sitting, because most people here are talking about tiger, elephant, and some people must be really afraid of elephants or tigers for that matter, because they're really dangerous. Not really. Tigers are really docile until you put them in a corner and you want to hurt them and they feel like they're being threatened. Until then, they're very docile. They'll look at you and they'll leave. I've been on foot a number of times in India and been really close to tigers because I was on foot. I didn't realize there was a tiger nearby. There was a leopard nearby. That was dangerous. When a tiger is nearby, it's not really that dangerous. So tigers are big, huge, but they don't know their own power against a human. Because if you look at it, their eye level is lower than you. So when they see you, you look larger to them. They are larger, but they can't see that you are not. So unless they actually hit you, they won't know their power. And that's how most man-eaters become, because they realize their power and they realize that they can easily kill people. So that's what I wanted to show you guys, and I wanted to tell you that do what you enjoy. If you do what you enjoy, that would be the greatest job in the world. And if you want to apply to jobs, apply to as many jobs as you're interested in. If you don't apply, there's a 100% chance that you don't get the job. But if you do apply, the probability goes up to 50%, which is a huge jump. So you need to apply. I still apply on the jobs that I think I would be great in. I learn from the interviews every now and then, and I learn from their feedbacks too. So it's always good to do stuff like that. I never got to volunteer because we don't get that many chances in India to volunteer. You are either an intern, you don't really get paid for the starting positions too there, and it's not worth doing volunteer jobs. In wildlife, we don't have volunteer jobs in India. I wish I had, but that's basically what I had to go through. So there's a sector of my life that was in India, then there's in Africa. So right now I'm pursuing my PhD degree from African study, which is on 27 ungulate species. So do you know there are 111 species of ungulates? Ungulates means all those animals that are four-legged. They could be elephants, they could be deer, they could be anything. They have 111 species of those in Africa. So I'm studying 27 of those. So that's what I'm doing currently. And I also wanted to show you guys just some pictures of what I have seen in the wild so far. I have too many pictures, but I'm just showing you just a couple. So bear with me. This is a meerkat. It's in Africa. It's an elephant. This is an African elephant. African elephant have their ears like the shape of Africa continent. Indian elephant have a smaller ear, or Asian elephant. You know what this is? There's a peahen right there. There's a peacock and peahen. This is a pied kingfisher. I really like this guy. You all know what this is. He was playing in the mud. It's in the wild. This is a peacock, white peacock with the chicks. These are catfishes, also in the wild. This is a star tortoise. It's in Africa. I just put this in here because you might want to see a elephant kid too. This is a weaver bird. It makes its nest like that. I found it very cool. It's in the wild. It's very small, so I had to zoom in a lot. I saw these in Cape Town, in Africa. in the wild. Usually they have one baby, but this one had two. And the older one was actually protecting the younger one. I call this zebra crossing. And then this is a mother and two cubs. Now you decide which one is the mother, which one are the cubs. But the one behind the tree, this is the mother. These are the cubs. This is a crested serpent eagle. It's also from India. This is from Africa. It's a very zoomed in image. You saw it very far. This is also from Africa. I saw a lot of leopards in India too, but this is the best shot that I have, and it's from Africa on the tree. It's in the wild. What this is, he was right next to my eagle. And this is a cheetah. It was also right next to. And that's it. Yeah, so if there are any questions that I've missed, I'm sorry, you guys were writing, but I didn't read. So if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We will also, I failed to mention, we will have 15 minutes for questions at the end as well. And we will answer those and do specific questions and generalized questions to all three of the panelists. So thank you so much. That was an incredible PowerPoint. I loved how you used your skills in it. So that was really fun. Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Randy Fulford, and I will let him introduce himself to you all. We'll have him turn on his camera and we'll get going. Hi.
Hello. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, very good. And just to confirm, I have 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, about 15 minutes.
Perfect. I'm a teacher. Like I'll take an hour and then you'll have a homework assignment by the end of it if you just let me go off too long. So good. Okay, I'll keep it short. But hi everybody. My name is Randy Fulford. Like Hillary said, thanks for the intro. I am a high school teacher here in Phoenix, Arizona. I teach in the Tolleson High School District, so in the West Valley side. And I'm super excited to get to speak with you all today. And I'm sure you're probably thinking like, oh, a teacher, like, what are we gonna listen to a teacher for? But I really wanna share my experience and my path to becoming a teacher, because if you had asked me at any point in my life in high school or in college, like, would you be a teacher? I'd be like, absolutely not. I will not be a teacher at all. I wanted to be a zookeeper. I wanted to work with animals. And so I have some really great experiences that I want to share with you and show you why I ended up in a classroom. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you so you guys can see it. Minimize this. Okay, there we go. All right, so yes, so let's get started. So about me, just to get this part over with. I was born in Arizona. I was born in Tucson and raised here in Phoenix, so I am a native. I graduated from ASU in 2017 with a Bachelor's of Science in Conservation Biology and Ecology. And then I also have a master's degree in Geographical Information Science. That's a GIS. It's a tool that you can use to study maps basically and build maps and tracking. So all related to my conservation passion that I have. And of course I went to ASU and I am currently working as a high school science teacher. I've done so for the last 5 years. And I currently teach biology and human anatomy for Tolleson Union High School. So how did I get to where I am? So as a kid growing up in the desert here in Arizona, my family took me on many trips to California and to basically anywhere to get out of the heat. And anytime we went anywhere, I always hoped and prayed that we could go to a zoo, and I would beg my parents, can we go to a zoo, can we go to an aquarium? And they indulged me probably too much, but they took me to all places all over the US whenever we travel, and it usually ended up with me at a zoo or an aquarium. And what's it called? I loved animals, and so I wanted to work with animals, and I wanted to be a zookeeper, and that was my goal, and that was the mission and what I wanted to do. And so growing up and going through high school, I even interned and volunteered at the Wildlife World Zoo here on the west side of town in Phoenix. And that was the plan, and that was the goal. And I watched lots of Animal Planet as a kid, of course. And then through those experiences of visiting zoos and aquariums, the message from those places is always about conservation. We have these animals living like at the Phoenix Zoo, but their job is to be ambassadors to their conservation stories back for their counterparts in the wild. So going to zoos and aquariums all the time really gave this passion for conservation. And I knew that's what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. And so I remember that watching Animal Planet as a kid, there was this documentary about the Alaska Sea Life Center, which is in Seward, Alaska. And it's Alaska's only public aquarium, but they also are the only marine animal rescue and rehabilitation center for the entire state. And I saw this documentary about interns who got to work there at the aquarium. And I said, I want to do that. And I think it's so cool because that was probably back in 2004, 2005. And then in 2014, I made that happen. And so in 2014, I applied for this job. It's a summer internship. It's unpaid, but they gave you free housing and let me work in the gift shop. And being a kid from Arizona, I had never been to Alaska. I'd never seen that type of environment or seen those animals. And so I was so excited to get to go and see everything that Alaska had to offer. So as you can see, they do lots of rescue and rehabilitation, but my internship there was also a partnership with the Kenai Fjords National Park. They have this national park right next to Seward where guests come from all over the world to come see glaciers and to go on boat tours and to see puffins, which are my favorite animal, and killer whales and gray whales and sea lions. And so I was so lucky to get this job and get this internship and get to go explore Alaska. So when I got to Alaska, I was excited and thrilled by the environment. The top photo here, that was the 4th of July. Alaska being so far north that during the summer, it never really gets dark. That's about as dark as it gets. And so they do their 4th of July fireworks at 1 in the morning because that's the only time it's dark enough really to see fireworks. So that was the 4th of July there. But then there's also glaciers nearby. That's what the picture there is and my background photo. And so, living in Arizona, I'd never seen any of this. And I was just so excited to see everything and see glaciers and to see water just everywhere. And I thought it was just super exciting, super, super beautiful. And so I got to go to Alaska and they still do this internship program. And it was a fantastic opportunity to get out there. At the Sea Life Center, they have animals. They have stellar sea lions, the largest sea lion species on the planet. They have octopus, they have seals, puffins, like I said, are my favorite. And my job at the Sea Life Center was to educate our visitors. So we had touch tanks, we did behind the scenes tours, and my job was to lead these guests through the aquarium and ensure that not only were they having a great time, but they were learning about the incredible work that the aquarium had done and would leave with an appreciation for this unique Alaskan marine ecosystem. So that was my job, but there was also interns who took care of the animals. There were interns who did the rescue program, who got to help all the seals that would come in that were malnourished, or maybe they got lost or separated from their mom too young. There were interns that did research in the labs, but also research on the animals there. So there's so many opportunities. And it was the most incredible, summer of my life for the most part. Now, aside from working at the aquarium, my job was to also work on this boat called the Northwest. So my job was to be on the boat, and this boat would take guests out into the fjords, the big open ocean bays of Alaska. And it was a sightseeing boat tour where we got to see sea lions, we got to see killer whales, gray whales were there. There's a smack of jellyfish down at the bottom, bald eagles, puffins, lots of ice. Yes, lots of glaciers everywhere. And again, as being a kid from Arizona, I actually lied to them and they asked me if I had any boating experience. And I said, yeah, of course. And I'd been on a ferry in San Diego one time in my life. And so I was so seasick. I was seasick every day that summer. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. But it was the best time getting to see, as you can see, all the incredible animals. Now, my job on the boat was not just to stare at all the beauty that was around me, but it was to take care of these guys. So on the boat tour, we had park rangers who would do narration and would talk about everything that everyone was seeing on the boat. But my job was to wrangle all the kids. This is one day when I had 36 kids. You can imagine, I'm like in college and they're like, here's 36 children on a boat. Entertain and educate them. And but it was so much fun because I got to take them through, they called it the Junior Ranger program, where we would teach them about the things that they were seeing. We would throw a bucket overboard and pull it up so they could put their hands in the water and feel how cold it was. 36 kids was definitely not the norm. I usually had around 12 to 15. But what's so cool is that this moment right here, when I took this picture, because I wanted to show my friends, my roommates, that look what I had to do today, this is when I realized that for me, it was actually not just about the animals, but about teaching people and sharing that information. At the end of this day with 36 kids, I was tired, but I was so excited and it was such a fun day. And I really realized in that moment, like, I loved sharing information with people. I love sharing information with kids and with students. And so when my program was over and I went back home to Arizona, I went back to school to finish college, I knew I loved animals and I loved biology and I loved conservation, but I knew that I really wanted to share that. And that was really, I think, what instilled this new passion inside of me. And so I was talking to my family, and I remember my dad, he sat me down one day and he said, hey, you know, what you're trying to do working with animals and studying animals, it's not easy, which I think our last presenter shared, right? That, you know, you have to apply everywhere. You have to be really mobile. You have to be willing to go everywhere. It's not an easy field because so many people want to, you know, so many people are passionate about it. He's like, you should have a backup plan if that doesn't work out. You know, pursue your dream, but have a backup plan. And he's like, what if you became like a high school teacher, like a science teacher? That might be a good backup just in case. Or you could work on it while you were trying to figure out, you know, what you're going to do with your life. And so that was what happened. So I made that decision. At ASU, I got my degree in conservation biology, but then I picked up a teaching certificate on the side. So I have this teaching certificate, and as part of my teaching certificate, I took education classes. And then I went into a class my senior year of college to intern at the school, and something clicked, guys. Like, it was so cool, like going every day, building relationships with those students and getting to share with them. It just like awoken something inside of me. Working at the aquarium, and, you know, for everyone that's been at the zoo, I'm sure you can appreciate this. Like, you have such a short time to capture your guest's attention, right? If you're working at a touch tank, I have about a few minutes to capture that attention, show them some really cool things, share some information, but then they keep moving on, right? Or at the zoo, they go from animal exhibit to animal exhibit. But when I have a classroom, I have a group of 30 kids who they have my attention, I have theirs, and I get to build that relationship and really, truly share what's important to me while teaching them biology, which is something that I love. So that's really why I've stuck in teaching for the last 5 years. I mean, the last 2 years have been insane and difficult, and teaching is not for everybody. But at the end of the day, it became the absolutely best way for me to share my passion about conservation and biology. And so I've been working. I entered teaching right when they had the big teacher walkout. So that was a very exciting semester. But what's so cool is now I get to show my kids my passions, and I get to share these experiences that I've had. I've led a group called an Envirothon group, where it's an environmental competition where groups of high school students have to learn about all the methods about going out into the wild and assessing a forest and recognizing different species of trees and birds and animals and tracking and testing. And then they are given a, what's it called? They're given a environmental problem that they have to come up with a solution. And so as a team, they get together and they make a solution, and then they have to present that, and it's a competition. And so they have judges. And so it's called Envirothon. It's a relatively small program, but it's here in Arizona. It's put on through parts, I think, U of A, but through some other organizations. And it's a really cool opportunity for Arizona high school students to get involved and to learn a lot of skills that if you're interested in like wildlife biology, that would be perfect for you. So I not only have done that, but as a high school teacher, I was able to take a group of students to Catalina Island off the coast of California for a sea camp, and we got to go kayaking and snorkeling. We snorkeled at night and saw bioluminescence and the waves with the little diatoms that light up for you. And I got to share those experiences again. Taking students on trips to conferences in Chicago. There's me at the Bean. Those two pictures happened about 2 weeks before the world shut down in 2020. So I was very lucky to have those experiences. And now going forward as a teacher, will I be a teacher forever? I don't know. Maybe not. Like I said, the last 2 years have been rough, no lie. But what's so cool is every time I still go out and explore. I went hiking in Utah last summer, and I went swimming with manatees in Florida last fall break because, you know, I have a fall break every year. I got to do something. And so I went to Florida and I went and swam with manatees. And my students usually come from backgrounds where they don't get to have these experiences. And so I get to share that with them now. And I get to hopefully impart some of that passion for them. So that's me. So that's what I've been doing. And what's really cool, I'm gonna do one plug. Again, teaching is not for everybody, but here in Arizona, they have the Arizona Teacher College, which if you attend any of the colleges on my slide there, they will pay for your schooling. And every year that they pay, then you just have to teach after you graduate. So if you go to school for 4 years, they'll pay for your 4 years of college, and then you have to teach for 4 years. But then after that, you can go off and do what you want. They get you a degree, and they get you a degree without any debt. And so that's an awesome opportunity that's started as of late. Okay. Ooh, look at that, 11:15. I think I hit it right on the dot. But thank you, everybody. I appreciate you letting me share with you today. Let me stop this. Oops, no, don't do that. There we go. Cool. All right. Thank you, Hillary. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We all know how time-focused teachers are, so great job. Stayed right on the bell schedule. Yeah, bonus points. Guys, remember, if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the question and answer session, and we will answer those after we hear from Marissa. Or if you're thinking of questions, we'll answer them during that time too, okay? Marissa, whenever you are ready, you can introduce yourself and we'll move on.
Hi, good morning. My name is Marissa Boyd, and I am one of the keepers here at the Phoenix Zoo. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Let me try to share my presentation here. Here we go. All right. All right, guys, thank you for joining us this morning. And I'm always happy and love to do these presentations because it really is about all of you guys that are here today. So I wanted to share a little bit of my story. Like a lot of the panelists here, it is unique in how I ended up where I am and doing what I'm doing. So the title, that is not a mistake because we are here to talk about you guys and just how to get where you're going, whether it's in science or not. It's doing what you love. And I started out, I was born in LA, just a little bit of a background, and I got a bachelor's of science in conservation biology with a minor in botany. As you can tell, got lots of plants here with me today. I'm actually zooming from home. And for me, I actually didn't start out wanting to be a zookeeper. Honestly, like many of you guys, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I was growing up. When I was really young, I knew I wanted to work with animals. I just wasn't sure in what capacity. And my journey to where I am now took me all over the country. I have lived in California, in New York, in Hawaii, and love you to join me on my journey. When I first started just out of college, I finished a little while ago. I started absolutely okay. Even going through college, I wasn't even sure in my third year what I was going to do. And I just knew that I wanted to work out in the field. I didn't want to be stuck in an office like Zara said earlier. I knew I loved doing education. I loved doing outreach, but I just wasn't sure how to get there quite yet. And after that, I was hired by the University of California, my alma mater, to do field work out in Coachella Valley. Did a lot of surveys out on the sand dune communities, and we helped pilot programs and develop policies on how to protect some of these habitats. And then a little bit after that, I moved up the mountain to San Jacinto. This is around Palm Springs, and we did a lot of bird surveys up there. And I also did a lot of teaching. So I hosted a lot of school groups that would come around the natural reserve, and it gave a lot of urban city students the opportunity to come out, see wildlife, get immersed in basically conservation and what we do out in the field. And a little bit after that, I actually took up an internship. Like Randy mentioned earlier, it's so important to get experience and go out there and just try it, because you never know what you're going to like. And luckily, because I went out there for an internship, a staff position opened up, and I became a research associate for the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance in their research department. So I actually have a very strong background in research and conservation biology. But again, I wasn't thinking about going into zookeeping. And you can see in the photo here, I worked with the Endangered Bird Program. So I found out that my passion for the past 17 years has been working with endangered bird species. That's not to the exclusion of other species. It's just what I focus in on, because when you focus in on one species, it's not as effective as working with a whole slew of species. So you work with one out in the field, you're going to be working with a lot of different species. And let's not forget about the bugs and the plants as well. It's not just about the vertebrates. So I had the very great opportunity to be able to work with the Hawaiian crow, which is some consider extinct in the wild. There was a re-release program. You can read all about it on their website, but it's an amazing program. And from there, I actually had a segue into a very unique opportunity. I was actually a wildlife educator. I went around to schools. I developed lesson plans. So I really enjoyed doing a lot of the outreach, and it really helped me develop my presentation skill, which I am a very shy person normally. It took me a long time to open up and to share what I do. And I really honestly enjoy it. And I did a lot of outreach, but because of the vicinity of where I was in Los Angeles, I actually did Hollywood studio work as well. So I did a little work on Zootopia, worked with lots of celebrity. It was really interesting to see the how it worked in the background, in the back, like behind the camera. So I thought that was a cool experience, but I kind of wanted a little bit more to apply my skills as a research biologist. So I came here to the Phoenix Zoo, and actually I love birds so much. I did join the bird team, and the Phoenix Zoo has had such great and amazing opportunities because I am not just a zookeeper there. I have made it, they've given me a lot of opportunities, and I've taken advantage of it, and I've had the ability to actually go out and do field work. So one of the species that I've worked with, hornbills. I absolutely love hornbills. And so I got the opportunity through the staff conservation grant to go out to Borneo and work with hornbill species along with my coworker, Brian McCauley. And we installed artificial nest boxes to provide more breeding areas for these wild hornbill species. And luckily, great opportunity. I hope this video plays. This is a video of one of the artificial nest boxes that we installed that was used by a wild rhinoceros hornbill family. And this is the mom leaving the nest. And it's great to see our work come to fruition. And because my ability to be able to do this out in the field, I've also had the ability to prototype this experiment at the Phoenix Zoo. And because of it, we got the very first hatching of a wrinkled hornbill chick at the Phoenix Zoo ever. So it's been very rewarding, and the zoo has definitely continued to be a great source of inspiration, and I have now pursued opportunities to help with taxon advisory groups here with columbiforms, which are doves and pigeons, which another one of my passion, as well as be an education advisor for the newly formed Asian Hornbill Safe program with the AZA. So I've had a lot of great opportunities here, and in the future, we're looking, because of COVID, it's been very difficult to get out there into the field because of the pandemic, especially trying to work in Southeast Asia. So I've continued to do work here at home, even though I can't be out in the fields in Malaysia. So these are kind of a little bit of the things that I'm working on right now for the next field season in 2023. And as you can see, we have bats included now because the pandemic has been really hard on the bat population because unfortunately they've been targeted. It's a lot of misinformation, miseducation, and I'm hoping with a couple of grants that I'm working on now that we can apply this to the Kinnear watershed, which is a very huge area of habitat that needs conservation work. And we are actually working with the local indigenous tribe, the Batik people, and to give them the opportunity and to give them a opportunity to care for the environment and the animals in their area and make a living off of it, as opposed to hunting them or otherwise. And so we should be looking forward to working with some flying foxes in the future. And I'm hoping with now being involved in the columbiform taxon advisory group that I may be pursuing some projects in the Philippines with some island endemic fruit doves as well. So again, this is not what I started out knowing what I was going to do, but it was a series of steps and a lot of different positions and a lot of different opportunities. So now my question is, for everybody participating today and watching, think about what it is that you'd like to pursue. Think about what your dream job is and work towards that. And your first question is going to be, well, how do I get involved? There's a reason why I put number one, courage, because myself being a very shy person, I was very scared. I was very nervous to get out there in the world. Just do it. Like some of our panelists said earlier, I think you just need to try it. I've had a lot of people ask me. I've served in a mentorship capacity, and I've got a lot of parents as well. I was at a festival for conservation biology, and I've had kids and parents come and ask me like, oh, it's amazing. How are you doing this now? It's like, well, it's been a long journey and it's been a long road, but you have to start somewhere. And one of the very, very few regrets that I had in college was not taking summer internships. Take those opportunities. If you can go, do it. If you think you're remotely interested, try it, because I think you'll never know if you'll like it or not unless you actually do it. You don't want to commit to something that you haven't ever tried before. And especially in your early career years, you have a lot of great opportunities to look forward to. Travel, pursue those dreams of yours and see where that takes you. You may not end up in science. That's perfectly okay. I think it's more important to do what you're passionate about, because that's the best way you're going to be doing your best for you and everybody around you. As far as education, it does help to have a solid foundation. No matter what field you're going into, it's always important to be prepared and to have a solid foundation from which to build your career from. And again, as I mentioned before, experience, whether it's an internship, whether it's shadowing somebody for a week, a day, going abroad, helping foundations in any capacity you can. You never know, through all those experiences, you're going to find somebody, you're going to find something that you end up doing that you are going to love and you're going to want to pursue it further. And I have to say, as a final message, find a mentor. Right now, I'm actually mentoring a student from ASU. And just when I was younger, I had a hard time because my parents were immigrants from Thailand, and they weren't the best people to help guide me in what I wanted to do. It really was a nod to Randy. It was really my science teachers and my chemistry teacher that encouraged me to go out and pursue what I wanted to do. And Find somebody, it could be a parent, it could be an uncle, it could be a teacher, anybody around you, because I found that a lot of my position and my jobs, they were referred to me from people that I knew, that they knew somebody in their network. Get connected, talk to people, and put yourself out there. Try, I know right now with the pandemic, we do everything very remotely, very, set apart from other people. We want that social isolation, but I think as everything opens up, it's so important to get your face out there and to get involved with things around you. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there.
That was great. Thank you, Marissa, and very inspiring. Randy and Zara, if you can, would you like to turn your cameras back on and we'll do 10 to 15 minutes of questions? Perfect. We had some questions coming in the chat and in our question and answer session, so I'll go ahead and ask some of those for you that are participating at home. If you do have some more questions, please continue to put those in the chat and we will check them out. There were a lot of specific questions for Zara at the beginning, so I'll go back to those towards the end. But we had someone that asked, how frequently do you get to go into the field for Marissa and Zara? How often do you get to really go out there and do work? And for Randy, how often do you get to take your students outside of Arizona?
Cool questions. Who wants to go first?
Zara, go ahead.
Okay. To underestimate, I would say I go twice a week. But there are also some weeks that I have to do a lot of paperwork. So on an average, I'll say twice a week I go in the field. It used to be every day when I was doing more of a research work, but this is more of working with the landowners. So I have to go to the ranch fields and fields that are, I cross the field to get to those ranches and meet with the landowners. So yeah, that's the field that I get. And I usually see the wildlife while going to the field, but I'm not directly working on the wildlife.
And for me, barring the pandemic, I was allowed to go to the field for 2 weeks at a time, once a year. And the zoo does fund a lot of what's needed to go out there. And I also self-fund because I pursue grant money that's external. And but this year, I did have the opportunity to go out with the Phoenix Zoo's Conservation Biology Department to help with some of the field releases. So it's once or twice a year. It really depends on what the project is.
Without the pandemic, I really started to be able to take students out to the field and have experiences at least a couple times a year. This year, I'm going to take some students to a body lab at Grand Canyon, and I'm trying to start up an Envirothon, so a team at my current school. So hopefully in the future, we'll get to do lots more experiences where we're going out and about.
Awesome, thank you. I think it was a general consensus that we all really enjoyed all of your pictures that you all shared. Somebody asked, did you take all of your photos yourself? Were those from your actual experiences? And we'll start with Randy because you're on my screen right now.
Yes, they're all, I quickly realized that an iPhone was not the best for taking pictures on a moving boat, trying to take pictures of moving whales. But yeah, everything. That's the best part of going out in the field is you have your photo and you capture the most amazing things when you get back usually.
Marissa, go ahead.
Most, like about half the photos are mine, half were stock images because I lost my hard drive a couple of years ago, so I don't actually have all the photos from my past positions, but the hornbill and the field photos are all mine, and those are documentation for papers that we are going to draft later in the year.
Fantastic, thank you.
Was that for me too?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Yeah, that was all the pictures that I showed were taken by me in the field.
Wow, thank you. A question that was asked at the last speaker panel, and I think would be interesting to know at this one, teens are interested in how many hours a week you work in your field. Zara, do you want to start?
Okay, guys, here's the tricky part. So I'm supposed to work 40 hours, but I work more because I like being outside. So I sometimes tend to work overtime, which I don't charge for, but I work because I like it. So I have, on an average, I would say I work 48, not 4. So one extra day, you can say, that I work on an average for a week, because every now and then I venture.
For me, it is 40 hours. I do work 4 10-hour days, which can get a little rough in the summertime, but I'd say that I do spend a lot of time outside of work pursuing my passion. And so I do a lot of reading and research about what it is that I work with just on my personal time, but that's something that I choose to do.
Teachers, we usually don't get to go home at 3 o'clock and call our day end. But it is nice. I have every holiday off, which I'm sure zookeepers, animals love to get fed on the holidays. So that doesn't really work for you guys. But yeah, I get my summers off though, which I have time to go have experiences. Like when I went snorkeling with manatees, that was during fall break when I had a week off and the kids had it off. So some cool opportunities with the teacher schedule for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you. Zara, a specific question for you, but I know that Randy and Marissa also have lots of other skills besides biology, but somebody asked you, Zara, do your animation skills come in handy with your wildlife job? It was really cool.
So what happened was when I started learning computer, it was from the paint thing that is there, and I enjoyed it. So I just developed it with time. It didn't come with wildlife at all. It was a separate thing that I started doing with a sales job that I took in Washington State, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Adobe Photoshop. So with Adobe Suite, I started learning YouTube videos, and I never have, I didn't get any certification or any kind of, training for it. It's just an interest, like a hobby.
Fantastic. I think that our hobbies can lend a lot to our careers. I think we all sometimes incorporate our own hobbies into what we're doing. So that's great. Thank you. Marissa, I know you touched on this a little bit, but somebody did ask, what kind of steps did you take to get a job at the Phoenix Zoo?
I get that question a lot because we do have an internship program coming up with the Bird Trail and volunteer opportunities as well. So I actually started as a research associate and biologist with University of California at Riverside in LA. And I think through a series of those experiences, people were recommending me and talking to me about, hey, would you be interested in an internship program working with Hawaiian birds? So I went over there, and then some of the staff and my supervisors over there knew some people at the San Diego Zoo, and then they were talking about positions around different zoos. And so I think a lot of it was just having experience with what it is that you're interested in. So in my case, it was specifically birds, and it was an easy choice for me to come to the Phoenix Zoo. And a lot of people say, oh, why did you leave San Diego to come to Phoenix? I love Phoenix because of the opportunities they afforded me, and the staff grant was one of those very important things for me to show that being a zookeeper is not just about keeping and being at the zoo. It's making that connection between external and internal ex situ, in situ conservation. So you're taking care of animals in captivity, but how can that benefit back to the wild population out in the field as well? So to me, that's important to make that connection and to open up those opportunities for more people.
Fantastic, thank you. Internships, as we've mentioned in the speaker panel and the other one, are just a fantastic way to get your foot in the door and to really experience if a biology type career is something that you want to do. It does look like we have a question that asks, is it sometimes hard to handle the animals? And I think we can all get experience from that. It seems that you all have animal experience. So let's go ahead and start with Randy. Was it hard to handle the animals or watch them on your boating experiences?
at the Sea Life Center, we had a touch tank that I was playing in all day with our visitors, and then I kept like breaking out. I was like, oh man, I need to keep washing my hands. It was bad. But I remember the interns that worked with the rescue animals, they had a really difficult adjustment because they couldn't speak to the animals, in like little baby voices. They couldn't, because the hope was that the animal could be released. You didn't want it to imprint on humans. So I remember hearing them talk about how they love this animal, they care so much, they think about it constantly, but they couldn't handle it or touch it. And so not touching the animal was very tough for that group.
Yeah, that's interesting that you point that out, Randy, because I know at the Phoenix Zoo, a lot of the keepers, they care very, very much for their animals. They talk to their animals, they train their animals, they develop a very close relationship. But in our conservation department, a lot of the animals that are bred there are for field releases. So they're not talking to the animals, they're not overly handling them more than they have to, and they're technicians over there. So it's very different in the same organization, just two different departments.
Well, being constantly scared of animals doesn't help. But once you do it, you realize it wasn't that hard. So it depends. I think I have had my fair share of animal handling experiences, and every time it starts in a horrific way because I'm horrified. But then once it's done, I feel like, yeah, it wasn't that hard. It's just, it depends. If you guys already are very comfortable with the animals, it shouldn't be that hard to.
And to add to what Zara said, I'm terrified of mammals. I will put me with the emu any day. I am terrified of mammals. It's just one of those quirks that I have. And they say you work at a zoo. I work with the bird group. So and don't be nervous that is something that would keep you from working with animals. We train every keeper. Everybody learns on the job. You don't come in with that required knowledge. There's so many different types of animals you're going to work with. Don't feel that pressure. You're going to be trained on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think it's important to have your own passions, and I think you guys have all showed us your passions, and we thank you so much for hanging out with us today. There were a few extra questions, but we will get to those in a little bit later. I'll answer those privately just for sake of time. Thank you, you three, for joining us. We are going to do a speaker, that's what we just did. We're going to do a poll now and then a short break. Gabby will put up the poll for you guys to answer, but thank you, Marissa and Randy and Zara, for joining us and taking time out of your very busy schedules.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was very fun.
Okay, you should hopefully see the poll now. Do you see it, Hillary?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So that's same as before. You can use the link, which I will put in the chat, or you can use the QR code. And this is just 3 questions. It's not as long as the one that we did earlier today. There we go. Now it's in the chat. And this is just to help us check in on how things are going for your experience. I'm going to give another minute for folks to get to the poll, and then I'll start sharing the results with you.
Oh, Gabby, you're muted. I thought you were just letting us look at the questions.
Yeah, just giving you commentary. That's okay.
There you
So the next slide question is if you have any questions that you still have unanswered. And so what we'll do with these questions that you put in is we will, if they're questions for the speakers, then we'll get the answers for you and send them along. Looks like we don't have any coming in right now, so that's okay. How old do I have to be a volunteer? I can answer that one right now, actually. So right now at the Phoenix Zoo, you do have to be 18 to volunteer, but we are working on bringing our teen volunteer program back. Hopefully, cross your fingers in the spring of next year, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But come visit me in the exhibit hall during the exhibit hall time, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the teen volunteer council that we're trying to put together, if that's something that's interesting for you. Okay, we've got someone who wants to be a vet, wanting to know about their career path. We can actually ask one of our vets that and get an answer for you. So we'll do that. And we have partnered with the Arizona Humane Society in the past at the zoo. Great questions. If you already work at the Phoenix Zoo, what do you have to do to move to a keeper position? That's a great question. I actually don't know the best answer for it yet. So we'll get that answer from our keeper staff and send that along. And for the teen volunteering question, how many hours of community service would you need? I am not sure yet. We're going to kind of redevelop the program. So we will definitely reach out and let you know once we know what the program is going to look like.
We had someone ask what the minimum age is for the zoo teen program. Do we know that yet?
Typically, when we've done it in the past, it was 14. So that's a good question. It'll probably be similar when we start the program back up. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one just so that we can take our break and get back in time for our animal experience. This is just asking you how much you agree or disagree with the two statements there. I got a lot out of the speaker panels. I'm interested in exploring a career related to conservation or wildlife. All right, so it looks like we're doing pretty good so far. And it's okay if you disagree with either of these statements. That's why it's anonymous, and it's also just helps us to know how things are going. Hopefully that bird is still serenading everybody. I can hear it really loud in my backyard. All right, so just in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move us on. Feel free to keep answering the poll questions. I'll keep it open so you can continue to do that. And we are going to take another break. We'll be back here at 11:55, and you don't want to miss it because we're going to have a really cool animal experience again. So, okay, looks like Mike is connecting to audio. So as soon as he gets fully connected, then you'll get to talk with him. And I promise Mike is not our animal. Oh, as fantastic as he is. There we go. Who do we have here, Mike? Can you hear us? Oh, flying tortoises. There we go. So I believe these are Aldabra tortoises. I can't tell. Can you tell, Hillary?
I think they're the Galapagos.
Or are they the Galapagos?
Or at least that's where I asked Mike to go to. But
Okay.
you know.
So it's probably the Galapagos tortoises. Mike's trying to get connected to audio.
Yeah.
These are one of our original animals from the Phoenix Zoo. Her name is Mary. She's one of our Galapagos tortoises.
Test 1, 2.
There you are. We hear ya.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened with my link, but I am here with some beautiful and amazing animals. And you, Gabby, you are right. This is Mary. So what I'd like you guys to do is, if you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And then Gabby or Hillary will read them to me in just a few minutes. So I am on the Tropics Trail at the Phoenix Zoo. I am with the Galapagos tortoises. Now, there's lots of different types of Galapagos tortoises, and the Galapagos Islands are not just one island. The Galapagos are not just one island. There are several islands. There are 7 large islands and then several very small islands. And at one time, it was believed that there were 15 subspecies of islands, or subspecies of these tortoises. But they've recently been studying and looking at the classification of these guys. We are home to 2 different species of Galapagos tortoise. Both of our tortoises come from an island called Isabella. Isabella is an interesting island. It's very large. If you look at it at a map, it looks like a seahorse. But there's been a lot of volcanic activity on that island, and there are these massive lava flows that separate some of these tortoises. So the tortoises that we're looking at, and as we told you, this is Mary, and that's Junior over here. Junior is offspring to Mary. Junior was hatched here at the Phoenix Zoo in 1992. Mary, currently, we believe she is between 90 and 100 years of age. And then the big guy over here who's stretching up, he's got a funny name. His name is Mopey. Estimated that he was hatched in 1928. He arrived here at the Phoenix Zoo in 2014. And these are called Vulcan Darwin tortoises. Now, in another part of the island of Isabella, there is another type of tortoise, and we'll see them in just a few minutes. And those are the Iguana Cove tortoises. And again, they are separated on this island, and they've been separated for a period of time where that they are considered different species now. And again, it's because of these lava flows that separate them. We're going to do a close-up here on the big guy. Now, there are birds that live on the islands that will perch on these tortoises and remove parasites and ticks. So I'm going to reach out and try to keep the camera steady, and I'm going to rub his neck. And this is something that they would do in the wild that would allow birds to get on his skin to remove all kinds of parasites. Some of you may have seen videos of sea turtles going into a cleaning spot where other fish feed on parasites on them. Well, the same sort of thing happens with these giant tortoises. So again, this is, see, he's got some flies on him. It's getting warm out here. The flies are trying to get a little bit of his food.
Mike,
yes.
how
Hillary?
big do they get, and how much do they weigh?
So as a general statement, Galapagos tortoises can get up to 700 pounds. Now, we are looking at Mopey, who currently, his last weight was 400 pounds. Now, we will see a little bit of variation in their weights this time of year as we come out of the winter, and it was cooler recently. Their activity level was not as high, so they weren't eating as much. So right now, he's probably low 400s. When we get through the summer and go into the fall, he will be the heaviest, and he may put on 20 to 50 pounds by then. So we will see about a 50-pound change in their weights based on the time of year. So up to 700 pounds. Again, he can be 400 to 450. The girls, Mary's about 200 pounds, as is Junior here. Let's go look at the Iguana Cove girls. They're next door.
As you're walking over, can you tell us how long they live?
So great question. We don't know, because records were not kept very well back in the day. So what would happen was, we're going to have someone stretch up here. We'll take a quick look at us. This is one of the Iguana Cove tortoises. So we really don't know because records were not kept well. When people would go to these islands to capture them for the pet trade or zoos, but also many whaling ships used to stop on these islands to collect tortoises because they could keep them alive for years as they went on these whaling expeditions. So those records were not kept well. We don't know many of their hatch dates. Like I mentioned with Mopi, we think he was hatched in 1928. We really don't know. We have no idea. Because again, no one was keeping track of that stuff back then. We're gonna go meet our biggest Galapagos tortoise now. I'm gonna go show you Elvis. Elvis weighs in around 500 pounds. So I'll try not to jiggle the camera too much as we go and say hi to Elvis. Elvis has a bit of a flatter shell, and that is that's something that we would sometimes see shell differences between these species. He's over here by this Palo Verde tree. So it'll just take me a few minutes to get to him, see which direction we want to go here. There's Elvis. I'm going to sit on the ground. There's Elvis. Hillary, what other questions do we have?
Let's see. How much do they eat?
So it also depends on the time of year. Being that they rely on an outside source to heat their body up, in the winter, they're not eating as much as they would be eating in the spring and summer. I know that they will, I've seen the diets for the tortoises, and they come in mixed greens with different treats that is kind of like a large Rubbermaid bin of greens and hay for all of these tortoises. But it does vary based on the time of year and temperature of the year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike, and all of our tortoises.
So we'd like to welcome Kelly McGowan. She's part of our human resources team here at the Phoenix Zoo. She's a human resources manager of staff engagement. So she takes care of all of our new hires and orients everybody, and also runs our volunteer program. And she also does a lot of activities for the staff to really help us feel welcomed and included in the zoo. So she has got a lot on her plate, and she's also really, really knowledgeable about how to get a job and what's the best way to, what are some tips for the resume and tips for thinking about getting ready for interviews. So that's what Kelly is going to talk about with us. So she's going to go ahead and do her presentation. Feel free to type your questions in the chat or the Q&A, just like we did with the speakers earlier today. And Hillary and I will keep track of those and ask them of Kelly at the end. So just send them in whenever you have them, and we will we'll ask her when she's done. All right, Kelly, if you are ready, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. And Gabby, it says I need permission to share my screen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I think you need to stop sharing yours.
Oh, that's why I forgot I was. There we go.
Okay, awesome.
There we go. We can see it now.
Okay. Let me just move over to presenter view. Okay, are we all set, Gabby?
We can see your next slide and your first slide if that matters to you.
Okay, let me change that. Okay, there we go. Okay, awesome. So thanks, Gabby, for the intro. Like she said, I oversee the recruitment process for all of our staff and volunteers. I have onboarded over 800 employees in my 4 years here at the Phoenix Zoo. So you can say I've seen a lot of resume cover letters and have conducted a lot of interviews. So I am here to pass my knowledge on to all of you guys. So what's the purpose of a resume? It's It's to showcase that you're the best fit for the job in order to land you that interview. So it takes on average about 20 seconds for recruiters to screen your resume to see if we want to move you forward in the selection process. Therefore, you need to make a great impression from early on, and here's how. So here is a template of an outline for an effective resume, and we'll go through each section in the upcoming slides together. But just like Subway, Chipotle, we have to build that resume just to fit and tailor around you. So some basic do's of resume writing. You want to make sure your font is easy to read. So go with your basic Times New Roman. Don't do anything in cursive. Don't have any emojis. Don't have anything too big or too bolded. We want the resume to be specific to the job you are applying for. And then use action verbs because this shows the hiring manager that you can get things done. So the first part of your resume is your heading, and this highlights your qualifications in a couple of sentences or a couple of bullet points. So some suggestions can be a professional summary, a summary of qualifications, a statement of qualifications. So here are some effective headings. So the example we'll run through together, we're going to be applying for a camp counselor role. So an effective professional summary would be responsible high school student who enjoys working with children, has 3 years of experience babysitting children ages 2 through 11, enjoys coming up with creative games and activities that are enriching for developing minds. So if you don't want to use the sentence format, you can also relay those qualifications in bullet points like listed below. An example of an ineffective heading would be to obtain a position as a camp counselor with the Phoenix Zoo. This is not specific enough to your resume to set you apart from others. This statement is everyone's reason for applying and doesn't showcase your skills and accomplishments. So the first part, you're gonna want to review the job description that is posted online. Use it as a guide for your resume. So for today's example, the job qualification may be experience working with children in an educational setting. So a great experience to highlight is if you've ever been a tutor, a mentor, part of a buddy system. These are experiences that employers want to see. It needs to be easy to read and have organized thoughts, and then you want to keep it very minimum, so it should really sit at 1 page. So some don'ts of writing a resume: don't use empty, common, overused words such as hard worker, effective, strong, motivated. And then don't use gimmicks. So don't use flashy paper, don't use emojis, don't use clip art. It comes off as desperate and unprofessional. It definitely stands out, but not in a positive way. All right, so now we're in the bulk of your resume. So the first component, you want to list your education. If you have a great GPA, go ahead and list it. If you're still working on bringing that up, you don't have to list your GPA, but you will want to list a summary of the courses you're currently taking and courses that you have completed. The next section is professional experience. So if you've had any previous jobs, go ahead and list those, and then your key responsibilities and accomplishments while working there. Clubs and professional associations. So if you're part of a sports team at your high school, National Honor Society, Student Council, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, those are all great items to list in this category. Volunteer experience, maybe as part of the Honor Society, you are required to be a tutor or mentor. It's not a paid role, so you can count this as volunteer experience. For a camp counselor role, if you are CPR certified or first aid certified, that definitely benefits you. And then the last component is awards and acknowledgements. So if you've made the honor roll, if you have stellar time and attendance, any badges you've earned that you're really proud of, this would be the category to mention these. It shows great pride and work ethic. Okay, so a little bit more onto resume writing. Like I said before, be careful of using meaningless words. So outstanding, effective, strong, exceptional. These really don't highlight your specific strengths. They're more generic. And then if you guys have had any internships, these count as professional experience. So make sure that you list those. And as your resume grows and you acquire more experience and obtain more professional roles, you'll want to list your education at the end of your resume. So once you have narrowed down your resume, you have all of your skills and it's ready to go, you're ready to upload it to your employer, make sure that you convert it to a PDF. And then if you have multiple pages, make sure it's numbered and that your contact info is on both pages. And a big do here is proofread, proofread, proofread. Great recruiters aren't going to disqualify you if you have excellent skills, but if we have 100 candidates that we're looking for and we have that many applications to go through and we see that you didn't pay attention to those tiny details, it could lessen your chances of moving forward. All right, so now we're on to the cover letter. This is a brief and to the point letter to the employer. It's usually 3 to 4 paragraphs and 1 page in length. So your greeting, you'll want to address the cover letter to somebody specifically. So human resources managers, hiring managers, these are great people to address your letter to. And then the next paragraph is going to be your intro, how you found the position, and then a brief introduction about yourself. The body of your cover letter, these are going to be paragraphs where you explain why you're interested and what qualifies you for that job. And then finally, your conclusion, express appreciation for the reader's consideration of your credentials. Other helpful tips, express your enthusiasm. Personalize it. Don't use a pre-written template for the same job, for different jobs. We can tell the difference for the candidates that really put the energy and effort into writing those cover letters. Okay, so you nailed the resume, you nailed the cover letter, and they are reaching out to you for an interview. So what do you have to do? My key point here is going to be prepare, prepare, prepare. You want to dress professionally and conservatively. So don't wear flip-flops. Try and wear pants. Wear sleeves so that way your shoulders are covered. Make sure you're well-groomed. So have your face washed, your hair nicely done. Don't wear an abundance of makeup or jewelry. Don't have overbearing perfume. And then you want to make sure your clothes are nice and pressed, not wrinkled. And then another component now of dress code is some employers do require masks. So find out ahead of time if that is a requirement so you can bring one and be prepared. The next component, arrive early. So account for travel time, account for accident delays. You can even scope out the interview site the day before and time yourself so that way you know how long it's going to take you to get there, and also find the parking spots. You're going to be nervous enough during the actual interview, so if you can alleviate any other types of nerves, that is one way to help in that area. Express enthusiasm from the get-go. So when you're checking in, if there's a receptionist, introduce yourself. Make sure that they know that you're so excited to be here and that you're ready to interview and you want to be a part of their team. I guarantee you hiring managers check in with the receptionist to see what their first impression of you was. And then finally, show confidence, greet all the panel members, make eye contact, and speak clearly. So employers are looking for skill sets within certain applicants. So you'll want to demonstrate how you're already a pro at the following. All employers want candidates who have great teamwork and interpersonal skills. So working well with others, how you contribute in team projects. And then communication skills. Make sure that you speak and write clearly and use concise sentences. Flexibility and adaptability is huge, especially with COVID. So make sure that you highlight how you can adapt to changing circumstances and respond positively to constructive criticism. All right, if I didn't say it enough, prepare, prepare, and prepare some more. So know as much as possible about the organization and the position you're applying for. Research their company website and social media pages. Learn about their core values. Learn about their mission. Know upcoming events that they're hosting. Know previous events that they held. These items will give you the advantage of having a variety of connection points throughout the interviews. Interviewers are looking for candidates that best fit their culture. And this gives you an advantage of connection points that make you a better candidate. I guarantee you guys are going to get asked this question in some capacity. Tell us a little bit about yourself. So here is a good approach when asked that question. First, talk about the present. Talk a little bit about your current role and any recent big accomplishments. Then dive into the past and mention your previous experience and how it's relevant to the job you're currently applying for. And then you want to talk about the future. So segue into what you're looking to do next and why you're interested in this role. So for our camp counselor example, a good segue would be, this role is going to help me achieve my end goal of becoming a teacher. Other common questions to be prepared for. So to have these general questions ready in the back of your mind, interviewers love to ask these. Why are you interested in the role? What do you know about our company? Tell me about a recent challenge at work or school and how you dealt with it. And then what are you looking for in this new position? And then finally, once they run through all of the questions that they're going to ask you, they're going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? And you better say yes. So if you can't think of any specific questions, these are good common questions to ask the recruiter. What does a typical day in the life of this role look like? How would you describe an ideal candidate for this position? Can you walk me through the next steps of the hiring process? You don't want to ask for constructive feedback in the interview. It diminishes your confidence and it puts the recruiter on the spot and kind of makes for an awkward situation. So ending the interview, you want to end the interview with the final statement on why you're the best person for that job. So for our example, I have been a tutor for the past 3 years and have worked with children of all ages. I make my lessons interactive to keep the students engaged. I create a fun and safe learning environment that has contributed to my overall success as a tutor, and then thank them for their time. Another advantage that will put you ahead of other candidates is sending a thank you note. This can be an email or a handwritten note. Email is probably your best bet right now because it's going to get to them the quickest. So make sure you pay attention to your interviewers' names. And if you can even ask for a business card so that way you know who to address it to. Okay, so we love social media. Social media is great, but it's also another screening tool that recruiters use. So if you have a LinkedIn, that's awesome, but you also have to be careful about your personal pages. So Facebook and Twitter, those are older. That's my generation. You guys are probably now into TikTok and Instagram. So make sure whatever you guys are posting on those sites are positive so they don't negatively impact you later. All right, so virtual interviewing came about during the pandemic and it is here to stay. It helps with scheduling conflicts. It helps with remote work. It's just an awesome, quick, effective tool if we have a lot of job applicants. So that's why I wanted to make sure and give you guys some screening tips for this as well. So the first component is test your connection. It's going to be horrible if you are in the middle of an interview and you're doing great and then you lose the call. So just avoid that altogether and test the connection ahead of time. How early should you show up for a virtual interview? Join the call right at your scheduled time. Master your tools. So if they say we're going to be meeting on Microsoft Teams, make sure you have that app downloaded. Make sure you have your login ready to go. So that way there's no delay when you are logging on. Make sure you know how to adjust the audio and video of your call. You don't want to be screaming at the recruiter, and you don't want to be so soft-spoken that they can't hear all of your great answers. So practice muting and unmuting yourself. And then some recruiters may ask you to do a presentation or a project and share your screen. So you'll definitely want to practice ahead of time on how to do that as well. Have a backup plan. So run through your interview the day of, make sure all of your equipment is working, have other electronics on standby. So if you're planning to do your interview at a desktop and it's not working, borrow your housemate's laptops. If that fails, jump on your smartphone. If that's not working, then get the recruiter to do a traditional phone call. That shows that you're adaptable and that you are taking the interview time seriously. Make sure that you choose a quiet and distraction-free location. So make sure it's clean and uncluttered. Use a blank wall that has a few pictures on it. You don't have to rearrange your room. Just ensure that your spot that you're participating in doesn't take the recruiter's attention away from you. And then conduct it in a quiet room free from distractions. And then another big one is if you are having the interview at home, let your housemates know that you're going to be on an interview so that way they can stay as quiet as possible. It's going to look really bad if your family is yelling out Jeopardy answers in the background and the recruiter gets distracted by those. And then finally, we know you guys are so popular with the texting, the social media, all of those notifications and alerts. Make sure you turn those off before you start the interview. And then something most people probably don't think of is lighting. So you guys can see the two examples in front of you. You want to light yourself from the angle of the camera. Now, don't have the light coming from behind you like the one in the second picture. You can't really see her. It's just an outline of a body, and you can't see her facial expressions. And then finally, dress professionally. This shows that you are committed and that you're taking the interview seriously. Conduct the virtual interview as if you would an in-person interview. So they may seem less casual, but it's important to use professional language and remain focused. So since you can't firmly shake a hiring manager's hand in a virtual interview, you have to express enthusiasm via your body language. So the best way to communicate confidence is sit up straight, smile, and keep your camera at eye level. Other key points, be present, engage with the recruiter. Don't just read from a script, keep the conversations lively. You can keep notes handy, but don't refer to them too often. So you may have certain talking points that you want to make sure get covered. That's great. Just don't have your notes in front of you reading the paper the whole time. And then finally, keep calm. We know interviews are stressful. We know you're nervous. We purposely throw challenging questions at you just so we can see how you handle yourself under pressure. So if they stump you with a question and you just blank and nothing is coming to mind, it's okay to ask the recruiter, can I please have a few seconds to think of an answer? Or can we circle back to this question at the end of the interview? This shows that you stay calm and collected. And then finally, look at your webcam, not at your reflection. So making eye contact is the first step to building trust with your recruiter. Make sure you frame yourself so that way it's your head and your shoulders in the main component of the camera. And then don't stand too far away, so no more than 2 feet. And then pro tip, turn off your video mirroring so that way you're not tempted to look at yourself while you speak. And then just how we ended the in-person interview, you want to end the virtual interview the same way. So have your questions prepared, end with a final confidence statement, and then make sure you're sending that thank you note to your interview panel. All right, that is it for me.
Okay, thanks so much, Kelly. So we had one question that came up in the chat was, so you talked about the importance of being careful and wise in how you're using your social media presence. What about if you don't use social media? Is that considered a problem for employers?
No, that's great. You are not required to use social media in any capacity. It's not an advantage. It would only be a disadvantage if you're not posting appropriately.
That makes sense to me. Any other questions that anybody has? It was such a thorough presentation that they got everything they needed to know out of it.
Awesome.
Just give another moment to make sure there's no questions. Got some thank yous coming in. That's exciting. All right. Well, Kelly, we really appreciate you taking the time to be here today and sharing your wisdom with us. I learned a few things too watching, and I've hired a lot of people, so I have a lot of experience with it, but I still learned a lot from you presenting for us. So thank you so much for taking some time on your Saturday to be with us. And we'll see you back at the zoo.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, can we all see me? Kind of, because I'm back. There we go. All righty. Hi, everybody. How's it going? So my name is Rachel, and I'm going to be guiding you guys through the Conservation Center for a little bit. So before we get going here, though, I just thought I would then just kind of introduce what the Conservation Center is and take a look around before we go head over and see if we can see any of some of the animals we're working with here. Okay? Let's All right, perfect. All right, so right now I'm in the Central Breezeway. So normally this actually stays locked to the public because the animals we're working with here, they are endangered. They're also, because of that, sometimes are going to be released. So if an animal is going to be released in the wild, we want to make sure they keep their wild instincts as much as possible. So we don't want them becoming too comfortable around people. We want them to see a person and then want to run and hide exactly like any other wild-born would. So that is why they are very careful to make sure, even the technicians that work with them are very careful about how they interact with them. So with the public, it is always kept locked. So you guys are lucky today that we get to have a little bit of a backstage area. So to begin with this entryway right here, this is where we have 4 different labs. To my right over here is our Chiricahua leopard frog lab. Then over here to the left is usually our snake lab, the narrow-headed garter snakes, but right now they're actually all have been moved into an outdoor area. A little further down to the left is going to be a quarantine room, which of right now there are no animals in quarantine. And then all the way on the right-hand side, you are going to find our spring snail lab. Now, we work with other animals as well. We won't be able to really go see them because some of them are actually either in their breeding or they're in an actual secure quarantine area that not even I am allowed to go to. So we'll slowly actually begin here in, let's see, hold on, let's see, 1 second here. Yep, all right, we're gonna start here in our snake lab. Now, this is where we do our head starting program. What that means is we collect egg masses, sometimes even Game and Fish gives them to us, and then we rear them here from egg masses all the way to small metamorphs and sometimes even large tadpoles before they're going to be released out into the wild. what that does is, as the name implies, it gives them a bit of a head start, because if we were to just take egg masses and then just put them out into the wild, there's a very good chance those eggs are not going to make it. They won't survive that. Whereas we have found that if they are a little bit bigger, a little bit more developed, they are able to survive much greater. So even up to an 80 to 90% chance greater rate of living. Let's see here. We'll see if we can see some little frogs here in a minute. So you can actually see some of them are resting right now at the bottom. So these are, as you can see, actually full adults because they do not have their tails anymore. They will come up and for air, and they have some over there as well. So here, this lab, it's really important how they keep the water temperature. So frogs in general are susceptible to something called the chytrid fungus. What chytrid fungus is it's going to be a fungus. It halts their breathing and makes it so their skin can't really get the air they need. It has actually been responsible for most of the frog deaths in basically the world. They're not 100% sure where it started, but they do know that it is very dangerous and can be very deadly if left untreated, and it can spread very quickly between frogs. So one of the things they do to prevent that is making this a biosecure lab. So I'll show you on the way out there, but I actually washed my shoes before I walked in here, make sure I don't accidentally carry any of it in here. But also the water temperature plays a really big role with these guys. So the warmer the water, the less chytrid is able to survive in it. So they are also always fluctuating the water a little bit too, because also slightly warmer water also improves the rate of development for those egg masses, because the idea, especially with animals like this, is you want to raise them, get them developed as fast as they can, make sure they have their survival instincts, and then be able to release them back into the wild so you can keep those population numbers up. Now, I forgot to mention too, if at any point, I'm sure the Q&A or chat room or anything like that, any questions are being monitored. So I will either address those later or if someone has something very pressing. So, oh, really quick. See, that is the foot bath, as you can see there. So there's the cleaning material, and then you pour it on there, and then you just have to step on it a little bit. And then your shoes are nice and clean, and you're not going to carry around anything that might harm any of the other animals. Now, we are going to make our way closer to the back of the center here, because we are now going to go take a look at one of the animals that we are very well known for breeding here and is a huge conservation success story, the black-footed ferrets. Now, this is also a secured building. Black-footed ferrets can basically catch all of the same things we can, respiratory diseases, but also they are susceptible to things that might affect our pets as well. So that's why only certain technicians are allowed in there. So there's special methods. So we are actually going to be looking through the window. So in a little bit, they will be dropping some kibbles down in those enclosures, and hopefully we'll be able to start seeing them. Now, if you look at this whole back area there, you can also see that it is actually quite an extensive place. And I actually probably am too close now, but you can see that the black-footed ferret building, this whole thing, and way straight back all the way almost to the golf course, is the house our ferrets. Now, something unique about black-footed ferrets is that they are not related to domestic ferrets. So we think of like ferret pets. Those are going to be different. Those are descendant from a European polecat, whereas black-footed ferrets are native here. So let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on there. And I'm sorry, my reflection is terrible, but you can kind of see right through there. See, I'm looking at the technician and they're throwing in some kibbles. There we go. Okay, I'll hold it like that. There you go. See, you can see if you have ever looked at a ferret, own a ferret, or if you even right now quickly Google a pet ferret, you're going to notice the shape difference of them. These guys are very stocky build. You'll notice they have a very wide, flat head and a very thick neck on the very strong looking shoulders. That's because these guys are great hunters. They are primarily hunting prairie dogs. The prairie dogs are going to make up about 90% of their diet. And because because of that, they need to have a strong bite because prairie dogs are basically bigger than they are. Now, then they hunt, they are going to go for the neck, they'll scruff them. So basically, if they are able to get a hold of the neck of that prairie dog, they cannot escape because that jaw is very powerful. They also have very powerful teeth, very sharp teeth. It's kind of hard to see, but they actually have their canines that actually are long enough that they actually hang outside of their mouth. Now, I said that this is a great success story. And so what's really neat about these guys is originally they were declared extinct, actually, not just once, but twice. However, in the early 80s in Meeteetse, Wyoming, a ranch dog named Shep dropped a carcass on the porch of his owner's house. And they looked at it and thought that was kind of a weird looking weasel, but they thought, let's go get it taxidermied and also identified. They took it to the taxidermist, and the taxidermist immediately recognized that it was a black-footed ferret, something that they had not seen for a long time. So they contacted Game and Fish, and the ranch was also very cooperative and more than happy to have Game and Fish do field studies on there. They managed to actually find a small population of them. And so they were able to collect those few individuals, and they started to breed them with the goal of eventually being able to release them back out into the wild. Now, there are actually only 6 institutions currently that work with the black-footed ferret. That is the Phoenix Zoo, the National Black-Footed Ferret Conservation Center in Carr, Colorado, Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, Toronto Zoo, the Smithsonian National Zoo, and Louisville Zoo. Now, right now it's kind of fun because we are also preparing for our breeding season. It usually starts about late March, so they have been beginning their reproductive checks on these ferrets. They are making sure and seeing to their development. So for males, they're going to look at their testes and they'll get larger as they go, and then soon they'll start checking on the females as well. And once everything seems like it is right, they will be paired together. Now, when we match animals up, it is not done just willy-nilly. It is very carefully planned out. These animals are a part of the species survival program. So that is something that keeps track of every single individual, who every individual is related to, and then they determine who are the best genetic matches. Because when you're working with limited numbers, the greater the diversity of your genetics, the healthier that population. So they want to make sure that underrepresented genes get out there, and ones that there's a lot of that same gene, they aren't going to let them breed. So that is another thing. So the person who has the stud book, the person who has all the information on that, puts it in a complex equation basically, and they determine which ferrets should be paired together, and we are told which ones. So eventually, when they are all showing the right behaviors, they are physiologically ready, we will pair them. That is going to then involve, if it is successful, you'll have about a 42-day gestation period, and you're going to start seeing them anywhere from late May to June, July-ish. They are born looking like little pink grubs. They are very underdeveloped, so they are blind and helpless, but they grow very quickly. And as they do, about August, September, so a few months later, they are ready to be weaned from mom. And at that point, too, they are determined whether they are going to remain in the breeding program or if they are candidates for release. Now, when we do release a ferret, or if they say this is a good candidate to be released, we're not just going to take them and then just suddenly throw them out into the wild and hope for the best. The ferrets are actually going to go to that ferret breeding center in Colorado, and they are going to go into basically do a practice run. They have actually live prairie dog town enclosures there. So they put the ferret in those to make sure that they know how to hunt. Do they know what they're doing? They also test to make sure they know how to protect themselves. If there's other predators, to know to go and hide. You can see they went down in that little tube right there. That simulates the idea of going down into a burrow. And if they show that they have all of those successful behaviors, then they will be released. And it'll be determined by what location is needed for it, and also if it's an active site or not, because there are lots of different sites around the United States. Arizona actually has one, Aubrey Valley. but only a portion of them are a little bit active. Right now, Aubrey Valley is not considered an active population. It did decline. They're not 100% sure why, but they are looking into that. Now, one of the things that is a big threat to them is, as I said, some other disease, especially things that are carried by dogs, namely canine distemper. So that is, and also another big one is plague. Plague is a big thing because that will run through even the prairie dogs. And if it takes out the prairie dogs, it's going to immediately spread to the ferrets. And even if it didn't spread to the ferrets, if the population of prairie dogs go down, the ferrets population goes down, which is actually directly related to how they went extinct, quote unquote, extinct the first few times. There was a huge culling of all the prairie dogs because they were seen as a pest. So, and there's so many of them, they thought it's fine, we can just take them all out, they're not doing anything. The problem is that prairie dogs are a keystone species, meaning that they play a far greater role in the existence of an entire ecosystem than their mass would imply. Everything relies on those prairie dogs for homes, for food. They are aerating the grass. That's why we have grasslands. If we didn't have them, everything would basically look like sand dunes. They are what keep that at bay. They are always fertilizing and planting the grasses. So when that happened too, that was a big drop into the ferrets' food, but also during those and the expansion of ranches and farms, that plague and canine distemper started spreading through. So a lot of disease hit them as well. So they kind of had it working against them. So it's still really hard for them. They're still trying to come back, but it is a successful program. Here at the Phoenix Zoo, we've had over 500 kits born. In 2021, we actually had 27 kits born. That's the most successful breeding season we've had in the past 20 years. So that is incredibly exciting for the ferret population and also for the zoo as well. Now, since we don't see a ferret right now, I'll kind of explain also though kind of the layout that you see in these enclosures. So you have this main upper part here, and that plastic tub there is actually really rough and textured. It's meant to simulate ground, so they're never surprised then when they do hit actual dirt. And also that tunnel down there, that lets them simulate that prairie dog tunnel that they would be going down, burrowing, and then they are in this nice little box over there where they have a lot of nesting material. So that's exactly what they would be doing if they were in the wild. They also have other options like an upper nest box. And if you notice, they have that tube sitting on top. They do enjoy climbing up in there. Some actually enjoy sleeping in a tube. You kind of can see it there that has a tube just laying on the ground there. Because ferrets are very shy animals. They are nocturnal, but very shy. It's really interesting though when you do spotlights, when the Game and Fish goes out to see what their numbers are. They do what's called a spotlighting event, and it goes all through the night because you have to wait till nighttime when they're active, and then you drive around with these big bright lights, slowly scanning the open prairies, and then eventually you'll see a ferret, or rather, you will see the ferret's eye shine. It is going to be bright green, a very emerald green, almost as if you were to maybe flash a light onto a can of Mountain Dew. That's the kind of bright green you'll see. So they will then go and follow and see which burrow the ferret goes down into. They'll set a little trap for it, and then in the morning they'll check and see if they have any, and if they do, they will take them and then they will test to see if they have any microchips, because each of our animals are microchipped. They'll scan them and see, oh yeah, that is so and so, so we know they're doing well. They were released however many years ago. Or it's really exciting when you get some ferrets that actually don't have a microchip in them. That means they're wild, and that's always very exciting. So they'll make note of that. They will then chip them and make note that that was a wild ferret. They will also give them all of the vaccines that our ferrets here would get too, to help them against anything like plague or any other diseases. And so that is how they kind of keep track and see what is going on in each of those release sites. Now, I've been talking a whole bunch. Are there any questions from anybody or anything like that? Well,
We don't have any questions yet in the chat, but I want to give everyone a second if they do want to ask any questions about black-footed ferrets or the Conservation Center or about Rachel.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rachel has a huge amount of knowledge about the Conservation Center. I don't know, Rachel, would you mind talking a little bit about what your job is at the zoo?
So I am the assistant supervisor of exhibit experiences. That basically means we're kind of the jack of all trades, but you'll see us around. My team is in the exhibits like Stingray Bay, Petting Zoo. You'll see us driving that safari cruiser around. We do our discovery tours, those big orange carts, if you're ever here and you see them. We also do backstage tours, of which Conservation Center is one of them. For me, I actually got started here as a volunteer right out of college because I had a degree in conservation biology. At the time I was studying, it was considered the fastest growing field, so many jobs. And then I graduated right at the Great Recession and all the jobs went away. So I wanted to stick with something related to conservation. So I decided to start volunteering at the zoo. I also wanted to get practice talking to people because I have a lot of social anxiety. Talking to people and just doing talks in general are actually really uncomfortable for me. So I wanted to grow that skill. So I decided to start volunteering, and I thought, well, it'll be good until I find what I really want to do. But then turns out I really, really loved the zoo and I wanted to work here. Now, in what capacity? I wasn't 100% sure. I originally thought I wanted to be a keeper because that meant not necessarily being out with the public because I'm not exactly the most sociable person. So I was like, oh, it'd be more comfortable if I don't have to deal with people. But I didn't realize it until I was actually an intern, a conservation tech intern over here at the Conservation Center, that I actually missed talking to people. I missed sharing what we are doing here because we are doing so many neat things that I wanted to be out there sharing that kind of information. So that's how I decided to eventually join the exhibit guides, and just through work and just dedication and just sometimes just plain luck, I eventually got myself up here now to assistant supervisor. So, but conservation is definitely something that I absolutely love, and having again worked in here before, I can tell you that it is a lot of hard work, a lot of science goes into it, but it's also very rewarding. And also just take a look at them. That's so great. But yeah, that's basically how I got started and where I'm at here at the zoo.
Thank you, Rachel. We're super glad that you decided that working with the public is okay because you have done amazing with this presentation. We will end with a couple questions. We have one question that asks from earlier when you were talking about giving the ferrets their shots. The question is, when they're given the shots, how long do you hold on to the wild ferrets?
Generally not too long. I'm not actually 100% sure the full length of time for that, but they don't hold them for too long because they don't want to keep them from it. Because it is, even though a lot of times they will be anesthetized for it, they don't want to put them through a lot of stress and they want to put them back as soon as possible. So they will put them out there then.
Oh, that makes total sense. They wouldn't want to stress them out. Okay. Awesome, thank you. And we have another question that besides the ferrets and the frogs, can you tell us what other animal species are in the Conservation Center?
I can indeed. So I mentioned earlier about those frogs. Right across from that, we have the narrow-headed garter snakes. Now, this is a snake that we got in around 2014-ish, I believe. And at the time, it was not listed on the Endangered Species Act yet. So that was actually really convenient because we knew they would be soon. And so we wanted to try and figure out how to breed these snakes before a lot of that regulations came in place, because it makes it a little bit longer and the process a little more bureaucratic through there, which is all well and good and stuff like that. But we were able to figure out how to breed them just by basically letting them do their own thing, because it turns out a lot of animals know exactly what they need to do if you just give them the right environment for it. So you can kind of see over the way there, see those roost areas? That back outdoor area, that is called an outdoor renaria section. So that is where you're going to find an outdoor enclosure for those narrow-headed garter snakes. It is meant to simulate a waterway, so it has a little running, flowing creek in it. It has a chiller attached to it, so it keeps the temperature cooler, because narrow-headed garter snakes are going to be found at a little bit higher elevation. And they often, when they're trying to contract, they'll actually put little camera traps in there to be able to see in case they want to see any breeding behaviors or anything they want to just note of that. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, spring snails. Now, spring snails are really fun because spring snails are basically the size of a poppy seed, and they like to live in flowing water. So springheads, that's their name. So they're very tricky to find. So that's interesting, though, is that they are struggling quite a bit. A lot of animals that live in our waterways are struggling. A lot of it is because of invasive species like bullfrogs and crayfish and a lot of game fish. But also, there's a lot of stressors from just weather. So springheads can sometimes get really murky, really messed up during those really harsh monsoon seasons. That has happened before where it's kind of damaged some of the springheads and it changed the composition there. And that has affected their populations, but also a lot of you might be aware that our water is pretty hard. Then the level of minerals and stuff in it can also be hard on those snails. They are actually very particular about the kind of conditions they are living in, which is why they're really good to tell us how a waterway is doing, because they're excellent filters. They are going to be filter feeders, so they filter water. They make it also really good for all of the other animals as well. Now, another thing we work with is actually not an animal, but we actually also work with something called Huachuca water umbel. You can kind of see the greenery there, kind of looks like the cousin of astroturf. It's really small right now, but when it grows, it gets pretty tall. It's an herbaceous plant. It's actually related to carrots and parsley. So we have basically a refuge population for it. So if they ever need to put some out in the wild, we are able to provide that as well. And let's see, we also work with some yellow top minnow and longfin dace, which are a couple of native fish. They're important because a lot of our native fish are dying out, again, from those invasive predators and also from other fish. They're also important because a lot of different types of animals in the water will actually use them sort of as a carrier for their babies. So historically, there used to be a clam that lived in Arizona waterways, and the way it would propagate was basically the little larva, it would attach it to fish as they would swim by, but only certain fish it would work with. And then as it grew, it turned to a bigger cyst, it would just drop off, and then you had a bunch of baby clams. But a lot of that stuff is, again, is struggling a little bit. So this is called a California floater. There aren't any that they know of left in Arizona. They still are doing studies, Game and Fish is still doing studies to see if there are any there as well. And let's see. Yeah, mountain Graham red squirrels. Oh, how could I forget them? So mountain Graham red squirrels, we can't really see them because they're going to be in that building back there. We don't have any right now, but they are a very interesting animal. They are found only on Mount Graham, as that's their name, Mount Graham red squirrels. Now, Mount Graham has had a little bit of trouble between the fact that it's had some forest fires. So we remember all the fires that kind of went through the Pinaleños Mountains a couple of times. That damaged a lot of their habitat. Also, way back when a certain type of invasive squirrel called an Abert squirrel came in, they a lot of times are able to outcompete them on things. So they are struggling a little bit, but they are still there. We're currently just deciding and seeing, and they're still learning some more research on what's going on with the squirrels and how best to handle them. And then if you see that kind of mesh area, I wanted to get away from that because I was talking kind of loud, and I don't want to disrupt our Cactus ferruginous pygmy owls. That is their enclosure. There's a whole bunch of them. We have a breeding pair right now, which is why I didn't want to get too noisy over that direction. I want to make sure they have nice and peace and quiet. Don't want to scare them or anything like that. That is a tiny little owl. It's very small. In Arizona, you're going to find them living in a lot of our saguaro cactuses. Or cacti, I know the plural of things. And we are breeders here. Yeah, we've had many chicks born, and they are now being released into the wild. So another instance where it actually is really neat that we are able to help contribute to the populations in the wild. Other than that, that is what we have here. Are there any other questions?
I think that those are all of the questions that we have. Thank you so much for bringing us on this behind the scenes tour. One final question though for you, Rachel, and hopefully this doesn't put you on the spot, but since you told us your background and you started when you were a teenager and just starting out in college, do you have any final advice for teens that want to pursue a science career?
I do. And the best advice is don't get so caught up in the little nitty gritties like, or I must be this one thing. Like I said before, I thought for sure when I first got into conservation biology, I was like, I'm going to be a field biologist. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to find all those animals. Turns out I'm allergic to life itself. And I also really, really hate camping. I like running water. So that was definitely not in the books, even though that was something I thought originally was something I definitely was going to do. Another thing I thought I was going to do is like, oh, I'm going to go into environmental law. And then I went through the LSATs and everything, got into law school and decided, no, that is definitely not something I want to do. Eventually, again, like I said, I started volunteering at the zoo. Also, is one of the things that helps with volunteering here at the zoo or anywhere else really, is you're going to meet a lot of people with a lot of different walks in life that will have a lot of input and insight. And you'll actually learn about a lot of jobs that you might not normally think of. As well. Like I said, I never would have anticipated working in education, but here I am and I absolutely love it. So don't worry if you can't decide right away. It's okay. And even if you might be told, oh, it's okay if your first couple years you don't know it, but you should know it by your senior year or graduating. You don't have to know that either too, because there's again a lot of flexibility and it's all just a matter of exploring and trying new things. And just if it seems like something you want to try for, go for it. It can't hurt trying for it, and just keep going for it. And eventually you are going to find that thing that really sparks your interest that makes you want to pursue that. So yeah, basically just don't limit yourself. Don't pigeonhole, I suppose is what they would say. Don't pigeonhole yourself into one area and just keep an open mind. And it's okay. It's okay if you don't know. It's there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay and it's all normal. You might feel like you don't know what's going on. You don't know what you're doing. But the trick about life is pretty much everybody else is in the same boat. None of us know what we're really actually doing. And that's actually what's really beautiful about it, because then we can all help each other. We learn. So like I said, just get to know people, make connections is a big thing as well. And that will help in the long run too.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing your time with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. This was a lot of fun. Glad you guys liked it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Bye-bye.
And huge thank you to all of you for hanging with us today. You get a big badge of honor for being here all the way to the end. So we did record it and we will send that out in case you miss any pieces of it. We hope that you had a fantastic time and that you learned a lot. Keep an eye out for an email from us to learn about how to get involved with things at the zoo if you're interested. And yeah, we're just really, really excited that you were here today. So thank you so much. And we're good. That's the end of the Teen Career Conference. So have a good rest of your Saturday.